Through your worship, anything's possible, Counselor, but as I said, I'd like to stand by this because I don't want to take this vehicle off the road due to health and safety and leave one vehicle short at this time. And the money's there, and of course, I'm just making my recommendation.
So you can't, if knowing that it's not going to come right away, can you not, I mean, if it's a matter of like a couple weeks either way, is that really going to make a difference?
Yeah, it will make a difference for us. As I said, the vehicle will come off the road. And secondly, I'm not, Stephen is here, but if the money is in reserves, I'm the understanding it's a fire reserve fund for vehicles. The money's there and I'd like to use it. And this is why I'm standing by the recommendation, so I don't invest money into something that's going to be going away next year.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add, I understand some of the questions, but again, when it's a frontline vehicle like this, anything can happen with an emergency vehicle. Yes, you have lights and sirens when you're going to calls, but that doesn't mean everybody is obeying the rules and so forth. And, it's quite a few times that I've seen in my history that things can happen to these vehicles, and that's why I wouldn't recommend leasing them. We always hope that nothing does happen to vehicles, but yeah, and for me, again, with what might come up again in this future meeting, if we look to if it's the will of council to pass some other things here in this meeting, the sooner you get it, the better it is. It's better to have it, get it prepared, so that if something does happen to the older vehicle, that we're not putting money into it unnecessarily. Thank you.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to withdraw the motion I almost passed. I'd like to call the question.
Do we need 2/3? All right, to call the question, we need to vote and we need 2/3. Just a show of hands is fine. So the question has been called. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vane. Resolved that report FCR 20-07 Fire Command Vehicle dated September 21st, 2020 be received, and that the fire chief be authorized to purchase a new 2021 Ford Explorer PI, excluding equipment from Ed Learn Ford in St. Catharines, Ontario, in the amount of $42,957, excluding taxes. Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall?
Yes.
Councillor Frake?
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes.
Councillor Vane?
Yes.
Councillor Vardy?
Yes.
Myself, I'm a yes, so that's carried. And we are over 3 hours into our meeting, so we are going to take a 10-minute break.
Thank you. Hey, good one.
Thank you.
I think that was just an awesome, it ended on the 20th, but I think it makes a point that our council contributed to helping with that.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone back.
Thank you so much, Councillor.
We're live now.
Thank you very much. I made 512 cookies.
So he says.
All right, we're back to the reports. Report 7.1A, report CORP 20-06, Corporate Leadership Team COVID-19 Response Update.
Sorry.
And our CAO is going to do that.
Mayor Jordan, sorry, point of order. Weren't we going to discuss the playgrounds that I had lifted or not yet?
No, we're doing that. It's down a little farther. Is that DRS 20-06?
Hello, Mayor. If I could just introduce this report.
All right, CO, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Again, I'll just go through it quickly, the report. I just wanted to touch on that, we're learning a lot through this experience, both in our business continuity, but these documents, these updates that we're providing to Council, they're going to live in our archives when we ever are dealing with another pandemic. If you look at Appendix A, we're keeping track of every event that the province has moved towards. And we will be tracking this right till the end of this pandemic. The one thing I wanted to talk about that we didn't capture in the provincial and federal events, there were a couple more announcements since the report was written to today. Again, the Canadian-US border restrictions have now been extended from September 21st to October 21st, and we'll update the Appendix A document as we move forward, but I wanted to give you that. And then on Saturday, September 19th, the Premier announced that all private social gatherings were reduced inside from 50 to 10 and outside from 100 to 25. Again, these are private social gatherings, not anything conducted and controlled. The fines are stiff, $10,000 for the host and $750 for any participant. So that just came out on Saturday. When I wanted to talk about some response highlights, as you know from the last report in June, we've opened up some facilities. We've had some great uptake in our summer camps, almost 300 participants over 8 weeks this summer. The splash pad, if anyone was here, was extremely busy, and I'm glad we opened that back up. The library has done some really innovative things. The pick up at the door and things like that have gone extremely well. We've also the tennis club, the outdoor rink used for pickleball has been extensively used. So people are getting out and using our facilities, and that's fantastic. The other thing that we're looking at is we've got many of our playgrounds ready. We've worked on some other things and getting sports facilities ready. We're looking at opening up our arenas by the end of September, first week of October. We're seeing a lot of uptake in people wanting to play again. But as you know, there's lots of rules and regulations around ensuring safety. So we will require additional labor to make that happen. We also are resuming our advisory committees as was requested by Council starting in September and early part of October. And when we look at the financial impacts, going into 2020, our contingency reserve was about $60,000. So we didn't have a lot of room to play with in dealing with this pandemic, but I have to give Council credit and staff credit that we worked really hard to offset the revenue losses. So if you look at our updated report, our revenue losses have been extensive. They've been up to about almost 1.8 million. And then our increased costs with additional PPE and some technology we had to roll out were about 300,000. So what we're forecasting to year end and what we know today, we're looking at a $2 million financial impact of COVID. But again, because we were coming out of the gate right away trying to mitigate, we're able to offset almost all of that with the exception of 131,000. And you heard from Stephen and I that we received almost 682,000 from the provincial government to help us offset this. So we're looking at 131,000 of that 682,000 to be contributed to offset any potential deficit that we would face this year. So I'm pleased to announce, based on all the teamwork and staff work and Council work, we will not be running into a deficit this year with the help of the provincial grant. One thing the minister has said is we can only use that to offset COVID. There's always a temptation to dip into reserves, but this is a grant that we received that can only be for COVID because of the fact that we're not over this yet. And we need to put this into our reserves in 2021 if we feel that, we don't need any more to offset those reserves. Now, one thing that we're going to do is we're going to apply for more funding with the province. Communities like ours that with Council and staff, we've worked coming out of the gate trying to offset costs, not to have major deficits. We should be rewarded for that. And so even though we were able to handle and will not have a deficit in 2020, we should still be rewarded for all the work we've done. The skeleton staff we've had and the community actually did lose some services throughout that time. And really, we're going to go to the province for that grant money, another application by the end of October, to help us make our reserves more healthy for the next decade to come, and perhaps another major disaster like we've had with this, and we'll be equipped for that much better financially. The only time I've ever used my delegation of authority was for patios on public spaces. I think it was about 12 to 13 of them at about $100 per pop, but I did that in the expediency to try and get those businesses up and running with their patios. And that's the only time I've ever used the delegation of authority that council granted myself and the mayor to move forward with. So, so again, open for any questions, but thanks to council and staff, we see the 2020, there'll be no deficit, and we're going to make sure we balance the books.
Thank you, CAO. We just need a mover and seconder to before we begin discussion. Councillor Frake, Councillor Ritchie. Questions or comments for the CAO? Seeing none, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Frake. Oh, sorry. A little quick. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Just a quick question. If CAO Schlang has any updates on the hydro rates, which expire on October 31st, the reduced peak rate of 12.8 kilowatts per hour is till October 31st. We did see 10.1 cents per kilowatt hour from March 24th to May 31st, and then it went up. I'm just wondering if you have any indication whether we're going to be seeing a continuing reduction in the hydro rates, considering that the winter off-peak rate was the 10.1. And I just wondered if you have any idea if you have a sense if that's going to be continuing after October 31st.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bothwell, I can't confirm that, but we will go those answers and we'll send that out to council following the meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Jordan. I just want to put out a very heartfelt thank you to staff and to our leader, our CAO, Harry Schlang. All through this pandemic, I mean, nobody has witnessed anything like this before yet, but I just want to thank them very much for the good work they did. I mean, to come out of this and see a pretty bright light at the end of the tunnel, I think that's very accommodating, and it makes very high recommendations of the good work that the team did. And with yourself too, Mayor, you were involved with a lot of through the pandemic. So again, to our CAO and to the town staff, thank you very much for the good work you did.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Seeing no further questions or comments, moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Ritchie, resolved that report CORP 20-06 dated September 21st, 2020 be received, and that staff continue forward with the corporate COVID-19 response as set out within this report. All in favor? That's carried. Just need a mover and seconder for report FCR 20-08. Councillor Vane and Councillor Ritchie. Up next, we have report FCR 20-08, amendment to bylaw 20-23, appointment of an acting fire chief. Discussion? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Ritchie, resolved that report FCR 20-08 dated September 21st, 2020 be received, and that proposed amendment to bylaw 20-23 being bylaw to appoint an acting fire chief be forwarded to council for approval. All in favor? That's carried. Just need a mover and seconder for report PRO 20-01. Councillor Bain, and seconder, Councillor Dunstall.
Mayor, if I could just introduce this report.
Yep, sure. CAO.
Mayor, yes, council directed staff to look at possible surplus lands as revenue opportunities for the future, let alone maybe some future parklands, future requirements like modification of some of our facilities in the future. And so on behalf of Stephen and I want to introduce Suzanne Matter, who's joined our corporation a few months ago. And we really had her project manage this initiative that council directed us to do across a number of staff across the corporation, a very thorough review. And I pass it on to Suzanne who has a presentation, and over to you, Suzanne. Thank you.
Great, welcome, Suzanne.
Great, thank you very much. We're just going to share my screen because I do have a presentation. So I'm just waiting for clerks to do that. Sorry about that. We're just having a technical difficulty.
All right, we're having a few technical difficulties getting this report on the screen, so we're going to move forward right now to report FIN 20-12, Pathstone request for funding. Do you have the resolution? Just need a mover and seconder to get the discussion started. Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Dunstall. This is report FIN 20-12. Stephen, are you going to speak on that, or?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Great, Stephen, welcome.
Okay, thank you. As if you can remember, last year around this time, Pathstone Mental Health approached the town to seek funding for the implementation of a mental health clinic in Grimsby. At that time, they were looking for funding for about $20,000. The 1 year is now up, and they have approached the town again seeking additional funding for another 1 year. It is our recommendation that we go forward with the with the additional funding for another year. And then what staff would like to do is on a go-forward basis to sit down with different stakeholders with regard to mental health and look at a longer-term strategy in terms of how we're going to fund these types of initiatives with different partners. So right now, our recommendation is to fund for another year, and we would fund the funds like we did last year from the dividend reserve. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That's excellent that you're planning ahead to meet with other stakeholders regarding mental health, because it's a huge issue in our community and across Niagara and across the country for that matter. So, Councillor Vane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Stephen, quick question. I know that, say, GBF, Fort, Pathstone, they all offer services. Are they all aimed at the same group, like young people, or are they aimed at different age groups? And do we provide funding to them? Like, I fully support this, don't get me wrong, but do we provide any support to the other groups? Is there some benefit to amalgamating if we're all targeting the same group?
Yeah, we don't provide funding to these other groups specifically for mental health. We have provided funding to Fort in the past for other programming, but like specifically for mental health, we'd like to sit down with some of these other stakeholders specifically for that reason, for mental health, and together with the region as well, and to see if the town will continue to be in this space, to see if we're going to continue to provide funding, and see where we can come to some, we can mesh our different strengths potentially. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
I think when it comes to mental health, and especially in light of COVID-19, we'd be foolish not to continue this. We've seen a huge increase in people with mental health issues simply because of being locked up. So it's no different than being in a prison, and almost in some ways is that even though you're in your own home, people just need to socialize. We're human beings. It's the way it is. So I strongly support, I will be supporting this and support any effort towards this type of thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. And from what I've heard, yes, it was very well received, being held in the Grimsby Library, Public Library space being donated for the clients to meet there with the councillors. Now, I just wondered, because the 20,000 was an amount that was shared among a number of municipalities, so we weren't the only municipality that was reached out to contribute the 20K. There were some other ones within the region that also contributed a similar amount and provided space for the services. I'm just wondering, with COVID, 5 to 6 months where the services were not offered, if they potentially had any savings across the municipalities and ours as well for not providing those services the 1 day a week, if the savings could be carried over into this new year and this new ask. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the treasurer will look into that, right, Stephen?
Yeah, so we can take a look into it. I'm not aware if there was any savings, but it's a question I can pose to Pathstone to see if there was any savings, because you're correct in that they weren't operating for a period of time during the heavy part of the pandemic.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you very much. Here, once again, we're wandering into territory without any kind of policy or framework or determination of how much we would offer for granting per year. No kind of criteria for who would be funded, who wouldn't. So I find doing these one-offs this is what I was referring to earlier, this meeting, doing these one-offs, I don't think is a good thing, because then it's like we should be looking at them all. We should have a set amount that we agree that we're going to give, and we should be setting out criteria like a granting program, and sort of look at them all together and see where our priorities are. The only reason I would support this one now without that in place is because of COVID-19, and because we're in an unusual situation that is causing significant mental health problems. So I will support this, but I think it just highlights the need that we have to have a proper process in place to deal with these, and we deal with them. We set a budget, we have criteria, and then we make a determination. Thanks.
Yeah, if I can just respond to that, I agree with that fully. The interesting thing is that for years the town had a very strict policy about donating money to any organization. So this is kind of new for us as well. So this council has made some donations, and I think you're right. There probably needs to be some criteria set around this. So yeah, we will bring that forward.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Ritchie.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to see if the treasurer could get a hold of their yearly report and maybe circulate that, so to give us a little more information as to achievements over the past year, even though they might have been closed. I'm sure they might have been available by phone, which would still have some people working, especially over COVID. There was a lot of people that didn't react very well. A lot of people had mental health issues over the COVID timeframe. So I think that if anything, they were actually probably in more need over that time frame than any. So I'd just like to see if you can get a copy of their annual report and just circulate that amongst councillors through an email.
Yeah, I did speak to Pastone. They had statistics right through the end of 2019, but they hadn't finalized their 2020 numbers yet. So I will reach out to them again to see if we can get some of those figures. So when we look at this again in the fourth quarter, we'll have some better evidence.
Thank you. Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While we have the opportunity and while we're in the midst of this discussion, would this not be a good time for us to ask staff, I guess Stephen in this case, or Harry, to come back to one of our future meetings with some criteria, with a study, with a review on how this could be done and how we might, factor in how we measure who requires these types of funds and who comes forward to ask for them and what other municipalities are doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just as a start to put something together so we can, going forward, we'll have some really fair criteria so we can decide on whether we're going to offer funds to charities or not, or which ones. I think this is a good time right now to do that based on what Councillor Varney said. So if we could, I'd like to move a motion or suggest a report, whatever the case might be, to get this moving so that we don't have this discussion every year about the same thing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. CAO?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we were asked to look at a process related to the GEI board compensations of the hydro funds. We were asked to do that. We're targeting Q4, so we could bring that sort of benchmarking Councillor Frake talked about in that report, where we're looking at, what funding, where that funding goes, and we can maybe wrap that into that same report.
That would suit. I think that would suit. But going beyond that, at some point in time, if we don't have that fund, how do we go forward from there? So maybe look at two different scenarios, Harry, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Jordan. I'll be quick. we're in a very unique situation here in Grimsby with how we operate with our hydro funds. I've done some research. I've spoken to people that are on other hydro boards, and they do get paid. They do take the money that they're owed. So yeah, and again, I look forward to a report. How things were done in the past. It was always done. A recommendation was brought forward, and it was all of council that would approve it. But, yeah, whatever comes forward, I look forward to it too. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions, moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that report FIN 20-12 dated September 21st, 2020 be received, and that one-time funding for the Pathstone Mental Health Clinic in the amount of $20,000 be approved. Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall? Councillor Dunstall?
Sorry about that. I hadn't been muted before. Somebody muted me. Yes.
Councillor Frake?
That's a yes.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes.
Councillor Vane?
Yes.
Councillor Vardy?
Yes.
Myself, I'm a yes, so that's carried. Susan ready now? Or? Okay. All right, we're at report 7.1E. Need a mover and seconder. Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Vane. It's report TC 20-05, Code of Conduct for the Council of the Town of Grimsby and local boards of the municipality. Questions or comments? Oh, Charles. Oh, sorry, Charles, you're here. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. I hope you can see me and hear me.
Yes, we can.
I have been asked to draft a new code of conduct, which I've done. I presented it to you back in January. And just to highlight changes that make it different from the code that we now have, the current code has no numbers. It's very difficult to follow. It's very difficult to cite a passage. So the first thing that has been done is the code has sections and headings, and it also has a definition section where various terms are defined. The actual code itself is not very different than the existing code in terms of the general propositions. I've added a section dealing with social media. We've included more details around the issues of confidentiality. We've added some details regarding council as a whole and conduct of council and some of the principles around conduct. We've made reference to bylaw 19-18, which is the bylaw to establish a council staff partnership and relationship policy. And we have ensured that the draft as presented to you is compatible with that. And we've included reference to that in the draft revised code. Some other changes involve a requirement for members to disclose gifts they receive on a gift registry. Simple to do. It's straightforward. You get a gift, and you report it to the CAO, and it's listed on the website. And it's quite straightforward that way. We have excluded sections on the conflict of interest, because those provisions are covered in the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Couple other things. I've added an Appendix A, which is the Council Code of Conduct Complaint Protocol. So it's the actual procedure that you follow from the beginning to the end of a complaint. And also included in that is a limitation period for bringing a code of conduct complaint. And the limitation period is quite simply that one must bring their code of conduct complaint within 6 weeks of the first time that you learn of it, and in no event later than 6 months, so that at least we can find these things and make them relevant to the time period. And then the other thing that we added, to be consistent with Appendix A, we added Appendix B, which is the process for conflict of interest investigation protocol. So those are really the highlights. There is one typo, and I should have brought this to Sarah's attention earlier. But Sarah, in Appendix A, Section 4, Investigation and Settlement, under 4D, it should read, bearing in mind the confidentiality requirements of the Municipal Act 2001, it will be at the discretion of the IC. So you're adding words, it will be at the, and then adding the words discretion of the IC, whether to, etc. So if those words can be added, that really is my report. I know in our education session, I did the education session and ran through the slides based on the new draft. So we have gone through it now a couple of times. So that is really my presentation, open for questions.
Thank you very much, Charles. Questions from council? Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just would reach out to Mr. Harnack to ask whether point 2 under staff relations, only council as a whole and no single member, including the mayor, has the authority to direct staff. I think that came up as a question that I found in other municipalities, including the mayor, is not stated in that kind of a descriptor. And
okay, what section are you reading from?
It's
staff
under
relations. Section 8.
8.2.
8.2. Okay.
Just in the sense that, does it restrict the mayor from his duties under the Municipal Act, or the any councillor who just wants to ask an informal question of a director, that kind of thing? It came up as an issue where how we are to address questions to staff, and I just wondered that if, for one, if including the mayor should be removed, and if there needs to be just some clarification, otherwise permitted by law or whatever.
I don't think so. I mean, I think the duties of the mayor, as set out in the Municipal Act and perhaps elsewhere, are standalone. I don't believe they conflict, because if you read the words authority to direct staff, approve budgets, policy, and other such matters, which are all matters authorized that need the authorization of council. So I think I don't believe that this fetters the mayor's specific duties in any way, but it does say that, like every other counselor, you have no authority to direct staff or tell them what to do. The fundamental policy is that it goes through the CAO, just as it would for a counselor, it would for the mayor.
And I appreciate that things that have to do with direction and policy and whatever, but we had this issue where if we just want to ask a question about a constituent's concerns, that we have the ability to go to the director of the department or the department head to investigate or ask questions of them about a particular ward issue or a concern. I just want to make sure this doesn't constrain us to do that.
I don't believe it does. You're not directing them. You're asking them for clarification, or you're alerting them to a concern. And again, you want clarification around that, but I don't believe that you're directing them in any way. I think you're asking open-ended questions.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then just the last thing I wanted to ask of you is, John Maskrin drafted a code for the region, and in that he included a section on non-pecuniary interest. And it had a definition, meaning a private or personal interest that a member may have that is non-financial in nature, and that would be considered by a reasonable person, apprised of all the circumstances as being likely to influence the member's decision in any matter in which the non-pecuniary interest arises, and may include but is not limited to an interest that arises from a relationship with the person or entity. And that definition is included in the Code of Conduct to say that members shall not use the status of their position to influence the decision of another person to the private advantage or non-pecuniary interest of themselves, their parents, children, grandchildren, spouse, friends, associates, for the purpose of creating a disadvantage to another person or for providing an advantage to themselves. And then under conflict of interest, it actually expanded on that as well. So although the Municipal Act does provide for it, this stated that members shall avoid conflicts of interest, both pecuniary and non-pecuniary. Members shall take proactive steps to avoid those conflicts of interest. I just wondered if you see that I think that there is that gray area that we have to be very, very careful that we don't just say we don't have a financial interest, and it reaches out to the non-pecuniary interest.
Yes, and that is totally related to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And that's why it is found in Appendix B, which refers to the process of dealing with that. And it also, I think John, and if you take a look in Appendix C, I've set out Appendix C, which are sections 5.1 and 5.2 of the Conflict of Interest Act, which deals with all of those issues. But that is confined to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And what John is explaining are the nuances of pecuniary interest, non-pecuniary interest, the extent that that they go beyond an individual and into the family and the relationships. And that is all confined to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and doesn't touch on the you're getting into a different realm there.
Well, that's specifically why I brought it up, because the Conflict of Interest Act only address pecuniary interest, direct or indirect. So it only refers to financial, and I think that we have situations where there's a potential that it's not financial, and we're not addressing that.
Yeah, and I believe we address it here.
I'm looking at 5.2 and I don't see it there. Like I'm looking at influence 5.21 into the conflict of interest section, and that doesn't deal with non-pecuniary.
It might be in another area because I looked at it today.
Yeah, I looked everywhere and I couldn't find anything that reaches out to that extent to talk about non-financial. So I have a concern that we have a gap. Could I suggest that I pass the wording on to the clerk and then she can review it with you? And that rather than maybe approving this tonight as it is, that we look at that language and see whether any of it is appropriate in your view to include in some form?
That would be good.
And then it gives you time to think about it and review the language and see whether you can, there's a way to capture it somehow.
Yeah, I want to take a look at what you have,
Yeah.
and I will compare it to what's in here and make sure that we're not missing something.
That would be awesome. I sent the language to the clerk and she can flip it over to you. And then I would just suggest that maybe we just defer this to the next meeting just to finalize this draft and perhaps look at including that if it fits within what you feel is needed. So.
Okay.
The other thing I just want to ask you about is gifts. There's no valuation on gifts. Would it be reasonable to put in a dollar value? Because at this point, is it, the interpretation could be a pen or something insignificant. And some municipalities put in a $25 or $200 or a value. Would you think that that's needed or not?
I think that the exceptions are pretty detailed, and I don't really think it's necessary to put in a value, because oftentimes you don't know the value and you're guessing anyway. So I don't really think you need a value. I think what you want to be clear about is what gifts are acceptable. And if you take a look at the exceptions in 9.2, it's pretty detailed.
Okay.
So I don't think you need that, because what happens if you get a gift, a memento that's $26 or $30, and then you get into this game of often you don't know what the pen is worth. But the main thing is that you're transparent about filing the documentation so everybody knows.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Before we move on, I'll just get the mover and seconder to just
I have,
give
Mr.
me
Mayor,
the okay. You're still gonna get your questions. I just want to change amend the motion, friendly amendment to deferred to October 5th, 20th council meeting. Mover and seconder okay with that?
Point of clarity, Mr. Mayor, wouldn't you want to refer it back to staff so they can make the appropriate changes? If need be.
Yeah, so referred back to staff for the meeting, the October 5th. Is that good? Councillor Ritchie, okay? All right. Okay, Councillor Vane.
I just wanted to add a comment. We have a code of conduct with the federal government, and it's pretty detailed. And it sounds like Mr. Harnick has done a very detailed job. I don't want to overkill this and regulate every single action, every single possibility. My personal opinion is we just move forward with it. We can alter it. It's a green document. We can alter it in the future if we find it necessary, but I don't want to overdo it and get, to the point that we're under microscopes. And I think that some of these requests, like, could possibly one day, 10 years down the road, give you an extra $1 in your paycheck or something. I mean, come on, where do we draw a line? So I'm going to just say we just go ahead with it myself. I don't agree with deferring it. I think Mr. Harnick's done a great job. If we see anything else, then we can deal with it later.
Well, it was just Mr. Harnick's suggestion to refer it back to staff for the October 5th. So
And really, I'm not sure that I fully understand Councillor Bothwell's point. So I want to read what she sends me, or what the clerk will send me, just to make sure I haven't missed anything. And if you can put me early on in that meeting, we probably can dispose of this very quickly on October 5th. But I to be fair to Councillor Bothwell, I'm not really sure that I follow her point. So I do want to read what is proposed and make sure that it isn't there, and that it isn't at odds with what should be there.
So Councillor Bain, are you okay with that, or do you want to remove yourself as seconder and we'll find another seconder and we'll vote on it? Councillor Bain? Councillor Bain, did you hear what I said?
No, I did not. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I got my system out.
All right.
Okay, could you repeat yourself, Mr. Mayor?
What I said is, are you okay with the recommendation, or do we?
I'm having some real problems with my system.
Do we need another seconder so we can move on?
Oh, shit.
All right. Well, why don't I put Councillor Vardy as a seconder right now, if everyone's okay with that. And Councillor Vardy, you're up to speak on this now.
Thank you. I have a question going back through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Harnick, going back to the section about directing staff, that only council can direct staff. And the thing that comes to mind is there have been times we've asked like our public works department if they could put up that speed sign, and it's the sign that tells you how fast you're going to try to get people to reduce their speed. So I mean that's a rather kind of innocuous request. It usually comes up because residents have been complaining. I think it would be kind of cumbersome if some of these kinds of requests would have to go and be approved by council every time. It's not directing staff to create a report or, spend money or do something, that isn't part of the normal business. But I hate to be slowed down for some of these, we'll call them kind of routine, somewhat mundane kinds of things.
Yeah, you folks know better than I do, but I suspect you don't go into the office or to the area that puts those signs out and say to them, I want a sign out there by 9 o'clock in the morning and do it now. That, you would have a policy for how these signs are deployed. I suspect, you don't have to go to council, but I suspect if you're really following the code and your own bylaw, and this is compatible with your bylaw, It doesn't say anything different than your bylaw already does. You would just go to the CAO and say, look, there's an area in my ward. I need I really need that sign out there so we can slow people down or whatever it is that you do. Through the CAO, you're getting your sign out there. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Oftentimes we speak directly to the senior staff, the director of the various departments. I mean, I kind of feel to some degree asking the CAO to take care of that is a bit of overkill on his time.
But I suspect you're asking, you're not telling.
No, we're asking, but does
That's very different than directing.
Okay, all right. So making those kinds of requests is all right.
That's what your bylaw says, and this is compatible with your bylaw.
Okay, just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just want to comment about Section 8, Point 8, Staff Relations 8.2. There's very similar language to that in the Municipal Act and the Elections Act. So that's forwarded to that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell.
Sorry about that.
All right, I have the resolution. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that report TC 20-05 dated September 21st, 2020 be received and referred to the staff for the October 5th, 20 council meeting. Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall?
Yes.
Councillor Frake?
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes.
Councillor Bain?
Yes.
Councillor Vardy?
Yes.
Myself, yes, so that's carried.
Mayor, will I be getting then the materials that through
Yeah.
Sarah that Councillor Bothwell will provide?
Yes, Sarah will forward them to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for your presentation, Charles, and have a good evening. Sorry for
Thank
keeping
you.
you so late.
That's okay, thanks.
Okay, we're going to move back a little bit. Suzanne's ready for her report.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We should be working now. Sorry about that delay there. I'm just going to share my screen. I do have a presentation for you. So thank you and good evening. And it's lovely to meet all of you for the first time. Again, my name is Suzanne Matter, and I was hired as the new manager, purchasing and business strategy here at the town. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and present tonight. The following presentation really just provides you with an overview of the land surplus report. So in December 26, 2019, there was a council request by yourselves to look at ways in which the town can generate revenue. This came about as council was preparing and looking at financial impacts from the biodigester, as well as other budgetary restraints, and also the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital contribution. So tonight I'm bringing you an overview of how staff did a high-level holistic review of the surplus town-owned land. So every municipality is required through the Municipal Act to have a sale and other disposition of land bylaw. So we do have one. So our process really started to follow through on this existing bylaw. You can find this bylaw in Appendix A of your report, where it outlines the policy and procedures for how we dispose of surplus land. So I created from that, I'm a much more graphical person. It's easier to go through process flow maps. So I've provided you as a process flow map on how the town goes about disposing of land. This isn't something that towns do too often, so which is why I wanted to go through the process with you. So staff will go through and determine land surplus. We'll prepare a report, and then we are to bring that to council. To move forward with any sale of land, we have to have council approval. So if council approves no, then there's no land sale. If they approve yes, then we move through the next steps of the sale and other disposition of land process. And that would be where we go through appraisal of each of the proposed pieces of land. Then we are to offer land to other public agencies next. Then you go to the real estate process, public notice, and then we are in the council negotiation approval phase. And that's when the process ends. So out of this project that I took over, we created a land surplus 3-phase process. So we really wanted to make this replicable and easy to follow. So we also wanted to ensure that we were transparent, that we conducted due diligence, we engaged all of the departments, and that we ensured that we were following the bylaw and the legal requirements. So I'm going to walk you through our process and give you all of the background information and how we came about to the 4 properties that we'll be bringing to you today. I also have a GIS presentation, so I will be showing you the land that you can see as well. And I just want to distinguish that this report is just about selling the land and not getting into the visionary aspects of what we will do with the money. It's always exciting to talk about what you can do with the money, but this really is just of how we got there and the 4 pieces of land that we have available to you to discuss. So in phase 1, we have 3 pieces that we needed to complete, which one, we had to look at all of our town-owned land, then 2, develop prioritization criteria. So how do we even move forward and what are our priorities of determining what lands should be recommended? And then we came out with our land sales recommendation that we'll be going through tonight. So the town-owned land inventory. So this was with all the various departments in the town. We sat together, we looked at all of the available town-owned land and or that we had underutilized, that was sitting vacant. Again, this can be seen in Appendix B. It's a difficult map to look at, but again, I'm going to show you in a minute. I'll go through it on GIS for you as well. The next step in phase 1 was to look at prioritization criteria. And this was really important that we ensured each piece of land moved through a matrix of each one of these 6 criteria where we wanted to make sure we were in line with the official plan, the council's strategic priorities, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, what the actual sale of the land revenue and the tax revenue would be on each of these pieces of property, if there was any operating or infrastructure concerns or cost savings, and then overall, what would be the community benefit of selling this piece of property. So the staff report really outlines each one of those prioritization criteria. So next is moving into the actual 4 pieces of land. And I am going to pull up our GIS. So I hope you can all see that. I just want to get a thumbs up. You can't see that. Okay, I'm just going to make sure that we're sharing again. Okay. So can you see this, the GIS? Perfect. I'm just looking for thumbs up. So again, we wanted to go through and put these on GIS for you, and I'm just going to move through them. The descriptions of them are in the report, but I wanted to show you what the lands look like. So here is the high level review and GIS of all of the town owned land inventory, and that's what's highlighted in yellow. So this again was reviewed with an interdepartmental team. We looked at our parks, we looked at vacant land, we looked at any parcel that we currently own. Then from there, like I said, we moved into the identification of criteria. We broke it down and we came up with 4 parcels of land. So the first potential site is Book Road and Lake Street. It's 680 square meters. It is in a low density residential area. It would require a minor variance to legalize the lot size. The zoning is residential detached. It requires some services. And currently it is a vacant driveway access for neighboring residents. The adjacent uses are residential. The optimal and best use, when we looked and reviewed at the prioritization criteria, was for another lot detached dwelling or residential dwelling. And then we have our tax revenue for this property as proposed, and then the estimated value of the land at $300,000 to $400,000. And we can send this presentation out, or we can access it on GIS for you guys as well after. So the next potential site is Braden Avenue, and this is a roadway. It is 1,230 square meters. It is in a low density residential area. It would require a minor variance. The zoning is residential detached. It does require servicing, but there is servicing with access to Burgess Drive and McNabb Drive. It's currently an active roadway. The adjacent uses are residential, and our review, again, for the optimal and best use was to look at 2 lots, which we've identified here for detached dwellings. And again, you can see the revenue for the town and the revenue for the region, as well as the estimated value of both parcels. Potential site number 3 is at the corner of Olive Street and Ontario Street. This is 640 square meters. It does back on to the NPCA, so there would be requirement for a development permit. It is low density residential, official plan designation. It is the zoning for residential detached. There is access to water service and wastewater, and its current use is vacant land backing onto the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority or the 40 Mile Creek. The adjacent uses are residential. And so again, staff felt that the best and optimal and best use for this was a lot for detached dwelling. As you can see, the tax revenue and the estimated value is $300,000 to $400,000. And the last piece of land that staff determined as potential surplus was the North Service Road site. It is approximately 1 hectare. There is no official plan designation currently, so this would need to go through a rigorous official planning process with public input and zoning amendments, as well as an official plan amendment, as currently there is no zoning as well. It would require servicing, and that there is access to water and wastewater along the frontage. The current use is undeveloped, former QEW right-of-way and town right-of-way. The adjacent uses, as you know, are the Casablanca Beach Park, condos, commercial office space, new development, and it is parallel to the QEW surrounded by the service road. So as we looked at this piece of development, again, staff determined that this could potentially be a high-rise commercial development for this area. There is the Grimsby tax revenue as well as the regional revenue and the estimated value of the land. So I wanted to show you, just because it's hard to visualize where these are, so we wanted to ensure that you can see them on the GIS presentation. So now I'll just go back to my presentation. And then we can go into questions. So the next part of the land sales process is to move into phase 2. This phase 2 would not occur until we have council approval that the land is surplus and we can move ahead with the land sales. So again, this is not a short-term process. We would still need appraisal of the land. We would need a land assessment. Some of the lands that we're recommending require an official plan process. We have to offer this to other public agencies, and we need to move it through a real estate process and public notice. And then the last phase of this process is the actual sale of lands, where we would retain a real estate broker. Then we would negotiate and come up with recommendations and bring those forward to council. So the financial impact overall is a potential land sale revenue of between 4.2 and 6.6 million. The potential tax revenue for the town portion is 18,000 to 28,800 per year, and then there's a regional portion. The total land sale cost, so there will be a cost to sell the land, as we have to do appraisal. We do have to do some legal work, real estate broker, and a land assessment. We estimate this cost at around 500,000. But there is a benefit to an asset renewal saving along Braden Road, where we wouldn't have to spend money on future road resurfacing. So looking at milestones for the project, this was deferred, so we're a little bit further along than we had first anticipated, but we're still on track of something that we can move along in 2020, 2021 if we do have council approval. So we still need to have approval for council, go through a land review and appraisal process. There is an extensive official plan process that would move forward with site number 4, which is a North Service Road. And it's important to note with the North Service Road that as we are the owners of the land, we own what can happen with that land. We can, the official plan process, we are in control of what is developed on that land. So this is a significant difference than a private developer developing the piece of land. Then we will still need to hire real estate lawyers, do public notice, and again, negotiate with council on selling the land, and then move through that sale process finalization. So this isn't a short-term project. This isn't, we're gonna, if you approve today that this would all move through, there's still, it still has to go through negotiation, appraisal, and approval for sale if there's a price that council is happy with. So our recommendation tonight is that council approve the land sales process and that staff be authorized and directed to sell the 4 recommended subject properties in accordance with the sale and other disposition of land bylaw. So that is the presentation, and I'm happy to take questions as well. We have our Director of Planning here to answer any questions in regards to the official plan or planning process.
Thank you for your presentation, Susan. Yep, there we go. Questions, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So I have, I guess it's not a question, but this all came about when we were in hot water for the biodigester. We were planning a budget in 2019, I guess it was, and we weren't sure how we were going to pay for the biodigester. This project was losing like $1 million a year, $1.2 million a year. Councillor Vardy can attest that the team or the committee that we had, the board that we had managing it at the time, were going month to month trying to figure out how to keep it running so that it could be sold for a viable amount. And we weren't sure where we would get the money from. So what we looked to is like a potential land sale, so we wouldn't have to add it to the levy and, to get us out of a jackpot. So we're not in the jackpot now. And so we would sell this land and we would spend the money and it would be gone. And we might sell this land and save the money, but it would end up going to some pet project by this council or maybe the next council, because we only have 2 more years. You might elect a few more new people and that money can get spent. And so I'm of the opinion that we shouldn't be, we're flush. We aren't running a deficit for COVID. We aren't in financial hard times. I don't think that we should sell off this land like when we're not in a jackpot that we need to, because when we've seen through experience, there's a possibility that we could end up back in a spot where you look to where we're going to get some money from. And it's like, we could sell this surplus land. So so maybe I can ask the question, what are you asking us to support tonight? And would that mean that we would sell the land, and then what would we do with the money? And I'd like to follow that question up if I can.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Sharp. So through you, Mr. Chair, you know, this report came about, there was concerns and with the budget and the impact of the biodigester, but there are still ongoing concerns that haven't gone away of how do we fund the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital contribution? How do we ensure and add to our reserves, our infrastructure reserves, our facility renewal and our retrofit requirements, as well as looking at facility expansion projects and or stormwater and shoreline infrastructure and concerns. And then again, council strategic priorities and why these pieces of land were selected was to look at waterfront property access or purchases or improving and increasing our green space. So there's an opportunity here with vacant land that is sitting and that really doesn't have an overall large-scale community benefit, where we can take that money, put it into a reserve, and the reserves are not strong on the infrastructure renewal for facilities or retrofits. And we do have large upcoming projects over the next few years that we need to contribute to. So this was just that opportunity to look at this vacant surplus land and get some of that funding for infrastructure.
Yeah, so thank you, Suzanne. So I don't think that we should sell off this land, and I think that it'll just get put into a fund. We'll be looking at how can we spend it, all right? And it's like we take, I don't know, we're gonna take this money and you know what? I've had some conversations with my colleagues about this, and I think that some of them have the same opinion as me. So I'm gonna just leave it. I've made my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan, and thank you, Susan, for the report. Kind of a bit of a wake-up report too, which I like to hear. My question is, as we move forward, and if council decides to move forward, this isn't a package deal with these 4 lands. Obviously, council will be voting on each land individually to how we move forward with it. And then I have another question too, if you can help me out there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Cadwell, of course, you can separate out each piece of land. You could approve them in any manner that you would like.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And that was a clarification I thought you'd be giving me. The other question I do have, there are other lands around Grimsby, and I was wondering if staff was looking at the land that is on Olive Street that borders between Elizabeth Street and Whitaker Avenue. There's looks like almost 2 lots there. I used to live on Whitaker Avenue, so that's why I'm very aware of that property up there. So is that another piece of property? Is there other lands we could be looking at too for adding to our you know, our revenue value?
So I'll defer this question to Walter, but I do want to answer that question in regards to all of the other lands. So I'm hoping Walter can speak specifically to the Olive and Whitaker. But we did look at all of the lands that we own. And there are other lands that you could potentially put up for sale. But when we looked at that prioritization criteria, and I specifically mean when we looked at strategic priorities for council, that they wanted to increase waterfront property, that we didn't want to affect green space, that we wanted to ensure trail connection, sustainability, and all of the different, and the Parks and Rec master plan, and all of those different components. Somebody's talking to me. Sorry. And so when we looked at all of that prioritization criteria, it became very clear that there was many pieces of land that we could quickly knock off, or if it didn't make sense, or if it would have been too disruptive to the community, or if there wasn't a large scale community benefit. So I just want to reiterate that the prioritization criteria was, and this went through all the town departments, and we discussed each piece extensively, looking at all of those lenses. So that's why we came up with, to us, a very obvious 4 that weren't disruptive. But I did want to leave this to Walter, just if he wanted to discuss that specific piece of land.
Yeah, I'd like to know about that piece of property. Yeah. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you. Sorry for the disruption previously, inadvertent. That particular property is, I believe, owned by the Ministry of Transportation.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Specifically, yeah. So it's not owned by the town. But we did look at every property that we own. So that was part of the process. So in Suzanne's presentation, I think she identified graphically on a map all of the lands that the municipality does own, including on open road allowances.
So that property, Walter, is still owned by the MTO on Olive Street between Whitaker and Elizabeth Street?
Yeah, I believe that's right. And there are many bits and pieces of remnant lots from back when the Queen Elizabeth Way was constructed.
I remember all that, yeah.
Along the north, what would have been the North Service Road. They built Lake Street, especially down in the Grimsby Beach area. There are a lot of little bits and pieces that are still in the ministry.
Well, great. That's good information, and thank you, Walter. The other comment I'd like to make, just to add to what Councillor Sharp was saying, I think this is a good move for the town, moving forward. Again, we're voting on each parcel of land individually, with all the research and that's done by staff and our own, listening to the residents in the areas of those lands. But any extra revenue, for me, it's the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital contribution. I mean, that is going to hit us big time, and it's too bad that past council didn't move forward collecting revenues for the hospital like the 2 other municipalities did. So anyways, to me, again, the hospital is a big financial hit to the town. So yeah, again, thank you very much for the report.
Councillor Frick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it Susan or Suzanne?
Suzanne.
I thought so. Thank you. Suzanne, thank you for the presentation. Like Councillor Sharp, yes, that particular survey of potential asset lands for sale was put together originally as a result of offsetting the cost of the biodigester. So we're now talking about selling these properties for a totally different thing altogether. One particular piece of property stands out immensely, and that's the one down by the waterfront. And I know that Councillor Vane not so long ago was looking for us to buy land down by the waterfront. So here we are. We're faced with a piece of land we have in our possession, and for us to let this thing go right now, I think would be a silly thing to do, especially when we're looking toward the future and we're looking for parking. We're looking for things we may want to do as a municipality. If we had to buy land 5, 10, 15 years from now, might be a pretty big price if we had it, but we won't have it if we sell it. So I don't think we should just give up, valuable land that's in an area like that. I just don't. As for the other pieces of land, I'm sure that the taxpayers of this town who own that land basically we'd also have some concerns about some of those properties being sold as well. And I don't know if we've gone out to the general public, to our residents, the taxpayers, and asked them what they think about us selling those properties. I think that's a really important thing too. With regards to selling these properties and giving the money to the hospital, we already have a plan in place for the hospital. Yes, we can pay off some of that, and I'm not sure if we're locked into any of those financing arrangements or not. But right now, I would be very reluctant to go ahead and sell these lands. So that's my 2 cents worth, and hopefully others will feel the same. Anyways, I'll turn it back to the chair. Thank you very much.
Councillor Vardy.
Excuse me. Thank you, Suzanne, for your presentation, and it's nice to meet you. My understanding is in our last budget, we took care of the financing for the hospital. And as others have said, we did this when we thought we were in dire straits about the biodigester and covering off the kinds of huge losses we were facing. But fortunately, that got turned around, and we took a negative into an extreme positive. So, you know, I'm not feeling like this is the right time to be looking at this. I've got quite a few concerns. I think if we're selling off any land at all, we should be speaking to constituents and asking their opinion about how they feel about it. I know that Councillor Frake has spoken about the land down by the waterfront, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about Braden Avenue because it's in my ward, and I've heard from a lot of my constituents who are absolutely outraged at the thought of selling Braden Avenue. And let me reiterate, Braden Avenue is not an empty lot. It's a street. It's used by cars. It's used by people. It's used, you know, by kids going back and forth. And if you look at the particular survey that's in that part of Ward 2, it's not built on a grid. So, you know, you need these little switchways in order to get around, because nothing is really quite straightforward in terms of how the streets are laid out. The other thing is most of the houses in that survey have frontages between, you know, 100 and 120 feet. So, you know, on a 120-foot frontage is not uncommon. It's more the norm. So then you're going to stick up in the middle of this and impede traffic flow. A lot with 66 feet frontage when everybody else has almost twice that. It's not going over very well on any front. So I just want to say that I'm glad we're going to vote on these individually, because I've heard quite clearly from constituents that Braden Avenue should not be for sale. Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I echo Councillor Vardy's concerns for the smaller pieces, and it's almost like they were just thrown in there as gravy for the Casablanca parcel. Just kind of like to make it look like we've looked at everything, because when you're looking at a couple 100,000, 200,000 for a few of those little parcels, and then you're looking at a $5 million parcel, that's the icing, and that's what this is about. And I have a concern about that parcel, which I've had for a number of years, and as people know, I've advocated for it very strongly, because what I'm hearing is that this exercise is, as Ms. Madden had said, is that, well, we have a bunch of facility upgrades coming, and some retrofitting, and some large projects, and some shoreline concerns, and people wanted more green space. Well, this is green space. Let's leave it as green space. Let's leave it as green space that protects the beach from the QEW, the noise, the congestion, the all the stuff that comes off there. Right now, it's a buffer. You know, you put a high-rise there, and you've got, you know, yeah, you've got a noise buffer, but you've got nothing else but a wall to look at too. And we're removing the biodiversity and ecosystem of just that green space that we have now. The Waterfront Master Plan put in the thought that would be, you know, a plan for it. and that was done with the rec services people as well at the time, to perhaps look at it as green parking, a green infrastructure parking, so with permeable surface. That was to provide overflow for the beach and to provide overflow for the GO train. It would serve both purposes. That was the intent, and it knew the GO train was probably going to come, and that's why it tucked that aside to save it for that. At that time, everybody believed the town owned it, and of course it turned out the town didn't own it. MTO did, and the region just went through an exercise now to try, which I've been pursuing for 3 years, to get them to turn the title over back to the town. And that's not completed yet that I'm aware of through the legal process and still needs to be refined. This land, we can't give it away. We'll never get it back. We need a fire station in the West End. This could be a combined fire station, green infrastructure parking, shared, some type of a combination. We need to keep that available should that opportunity arise, and we do need to have a bay there for our fire trucks and safety. We need to, when Ms. Madden talked about some of the other reasons why we need this money, my concern, as Councillor Sharp said, is a pet project, and I know that we unfortunately got turned down for the Peach King expansion. I don't think that this is a rationale to support that exercise, so I'm just hoping that's not the thought. The other one is shoreline concerns. In the budget, we passed 1.3 million for shoreline revetment for the conservation building next to the pump house. And that 1.3 million was to do the revetment was conditional on the sale of the conservation building, which we own as well. What we'd be doing there, and I don't know where we're at with that, and perhaps CAO Schlang can comment, because in the budget, the intent was put the revetment along the shoreline of Ontario, but by selling the conservation lands, we're actually benefiting whoever's going to buy that. So that was just, I don't know if we've ended up doing that, but there's 1.3 million of town-owned lands that we were looking at, went through the budget as a sale process. So I just think that we're premature, as a number of councillors stated. We're not in a position where we have to do this. We have a surplus. We're managing the COVID. When we come to density and population, and I know the region's talking to our planning staff about where we're going to put all those people in the growth plan, I don't think we need to put in another 22 or 25 or 2 25-story buildings there in order to meet that. We have other ways within the town that we can do the intensification, and I don't think taking this space is the way to do it. So I'm totally against it. I think we need to save what we have. We need to protect it. I think if anything, we should be zoning it open space, or zoning it something that we can use for protecting it for those purposes, which is a potential fire hall, or for potential parking, and saving it for uses for the for our beach and for our people who are coming down to the lake to enjoy. Thank you.
Councillor Dunstan.
I hear you.
Sorry, I keep forgetting to unmute. The first half of the meeting, I didn't have to. Sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just looking at them. I mean, I don't know much about Braden Avenue, and Councillor Vardy has spoken very passionately about it. And I'd say, well, let's not sell it then, because residents wouldn't want that. But I'm looking at Site 3, Olive and Ontario Street. And it's just it's a lot, and if there's a potential to sell it and bring in revenue, I'd be supporting that. The North Service Road, like Councillor Bothwell said, that has too many good uses that we could use as a town, parking or whatever. That I can't see us wanting to give that one up, even though it's got great value. I think it has much more value if we keep it in our town owned. So, and a book, I don't know much about book. And again, that would be Councillor Frake and Councillor Ritchie that might want to speak on that. But I'd be all for selling Olive and Ontario Street. That's where I see it. The other ones I wouldn't support. Thank you.
Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Suzanne, welcome. We haven't had the opportunity to meet yet. I have to admit, you impressed me with your knowledge tonight. You hit on a lot of things that are very near and dear to my heart, everything from shoreline restoration to the pier to whatever else. I'm going to be the odd person out here, and I don't have any personal attachment to any of these properties. If we have a street or a piece of property that's being used for convenience, it reminds me of the GBF fight where GBF wanted to take out their stairwell, and the community went, crazy about it because they said we can't take the stairwell out, people use it. Well, I think we have to look at the bigger picture. In the case of GBF, it was just liability issues. In the case of a sort of a bit of a roadway, it's convenient for some people, a few people. I've heard arguments before that we should keep a park because, a dozen people use it in the area. I just don't buy that argument. As far as the one on North Service, the previous fire chief made it very clear the best location for a fire hall is actually up by Oaks Road, not down there. The fire chief raised a very good concern in that they would have great difficulty getting out of there. As far as us using it for parking, I don't find that argument very viable because are we going to have families running across North Service Road when we just finished talking about the dangers of it? I don't have any attachments. I do agree with Councillor Dunstall. The Olive Street one is in on both our wards, so I totally agree with him there. But as far as the rest, I don't have any attachments to any of them. I think we need to look at a bigger picture. We have things coming up, whether it be the hospital, shoreline restoration, roadways, infrastructure, everything. We've got a lot of things that we could use the money for. It's nice. We talk about pet projects and all we're doing is sitting here talking about how this will appease a few residents or we think this is good for this. I don't agree. I see a bigger picture, but that's my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question for site number 1 off of Book Road there. I remember this property very well from campaigning, and the house there, the driveway actually for the house beside it, if you looked at the picture to the east of it, the driveway comes in off of that vacant land as there's a roadway that seems to go in. So I'd just be concerned about how they would have to reconfigure their driveway. Maybe you guys have an answer for me, just curious.
Sure, I'll let Walter answer that question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor Jordan. It's an existing unopened road allowance. I think it was originally intended to be used in conjunction with the abutting subdivision to the north. That's the appearance of how it was laid out. And then when the subdivision was done, they didn't take advantage of that particular road allowance and left it as a dead end. In terms of the driveway configuration, I don't know if you can put the plan back up, but there is sufficient room on the existing lot that you're referring to, Councillor Ritchie, to provide a driveway on the property itself. The garage appears to be at the back of the house. Here we go. One more. And there it is. So immediately abutting the west side of the house here between lot number 1 and the building, there's potential to provide a driveway access in that location.
Yes, thank you. I just, like I said, yeah, I remember that house well, and I remember the configuration there. So that was my concern is there enough space for them to reconfigure that driveway? I don't know what their thought process was with how it is. If I owned the house, I'd probably be upset if it was a road allowance, and then now it might be sold off. So I just wanted to see if there was space. But thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell, I noticed your hand was raised before. Or did you want to add anything else?
just a quick comment to Councillor Vane's statement that parking's not viable. I think if somebody is going to put in a high density apartment building and they can do it like Aqua Blue and Aqua Zool did and in the interchange, then parking is certainly viable. And I think if we did decide we were going to use it, we would certainly find a way to make it safe. So I don't think that's an argument that it's not viable.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that report PRO 20-01 Revenue Generation Options Land Surplus Review dated July 20th, 2020 be received, and that staff be authorized to and directed to sell the 4 recommended subject properties in accordance with the sale and other disposition of land bylaw number 0776. Councillor Bothwell?
No.
Councillor Dunstall?
Well, the way the motion stands, we're voting on all 4, so I've got to say no too, but could we have a friendly amendment to it to see if we could, oh, there I go, jeez, sorry. Am I unmuted now? Sorry, oh. How's that? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Wondering if we could have a friendly amendment. We're voting on all 4 when we said we could vote on each one individually. So I'm just wondering, is this the way to go? Because if we're voting on all 4, I'm going to have to say no. But I mean, we agreed on Olive and Ontario Street. There was nobody that said they didn't want to sell that one off. So can we look at splitting it up? Or
yeah, I didn't have anything from the floor, so I read the resolution.
Yeah, no, well,
Councillor Ritchie.
I was going to read.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I see well, I don't want to speak for other councils, but I think the flavor for a lot of councillors is not to look at selling these properties right now. And you never know what COVID may do in the future and all the rest. And, you know, if we vote this down, we need to reconsider it. I'd like to put a motion to table this. And just to let my fellow councillors know, if we table this and we decide not to sell it, we never bring it up again. It would die. It just goes away. It's no reconsider. But yet, if something drastic happens in the near future and with COVID and all the rest, then we still have that option to bring it back. So I'd like to put a motion to table that.
I'll second that.
Do we not have to deal with the first motion first? The original one?
We deal with the tabled motion, the motion to table first. Then we don't vote on the second one, I believe. All right, I have the motion moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that report PRO 20-01 be deferred.
Tabled.
It's the same, isn't it? In our...
Oh.
No. It's not the same.
Different.
Well, yeah, I don't think we have it.
Right,
I think tabled was removed from our.
Made a motion for all 4 properties on the floor. Are we changing that now, or because you've already? Don't we have a motion for the 4 properties? Am I wrong?
Well,
there's a motion to table that motion. It's a secondary motion.
So we can do, okay, all right, just want to clarify.
Yeah.
Pardon? Tabled. All right. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that report PRO 20-01 be tabled. Councillor Bothwell?
Just have a question on that because it's come back to us now twice. And as Ms. Madden mentioned, that sale of properties comes up very, very infrequently. I don't feel tabling it as an option because I think that I would rather see it be 2/3 to have it come back again, just because of we've been through it twice now and how important it is that this be considered. So yeah, I'm not going to support tabling it.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but we're debating it again when the motion's being asked to be voted on.
I think Councillor Bothwell was just explaining why she was going to vote no. So, Councillor Dunstall?
Yes.
Councillor Frake?
No.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes.
Councillor Vane?
Yes.
Councillor Vardy?
No.
And myself, I'm no. So that is carried.
Carried.
So it's been tabled.
We're sniffling now.
No.
I tried not to sniffle. Did I sniffle in the presentation?
So we're on 7.2, Councillor Sharp's resolution. Moved by Councillor Sharp, second by Councillor Frake. Whereas the province of Ontario has reduced the size of gatherings only in private residence and not in businesses, schools, or churches, and whereas all Canadians are guaranteed the basic freedom of association, giving us the right to organize formally and informally with our loved ones and family in our private homes for birthdays, Thanksgiving, and even just family dinners, and whereas these gatherings are still permitted in Ontario, but only monitored settings that are staff businesses. Therefore, be it resolved to send this correspondence to the Premier of Ontario, asking the province to either limit all gatherings if it can be demonstrated that it is the only way to protect public health, or to reconsider the limit on only private gatherings. And discussion? Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Jordan, if I could have the first kick at this can.
Sorry, Mayor Jordan, my hand was up just because I forgot to take it down from last time.
All right. So, Councillor Sharp, I will let you go first,
Okay,
unless
thank
I'm
you, Mayor.
challenged.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. So I brought this resolution because like a limit of 10 people gathering in a private residence and only in private residence is like, so I find that if it is unsafe to gather, then it's unsafe to gather. But if it's still allowed to go to a bar or to go to a restaurant, and when we talk about Thanksgiving, they would say that it is unsafe and illegal to the tune of $10,000 fine for having more than 10 people in your house. It's not like illegal, you shouldn't do it, you get a $40 parking ticket. This is like, 25% of the average Canadian income, annual income. And if it's unsafe to gather with more than 10 people, then I think that they should limit all gatherings. But if it's unsafe for me to have my sister, her family is 6 and my family is 5, and if it's unsafe for me to have her over for dinner, but it is safe for me to take her out to a restaurant downtown, then, well, I look for where's the discrepancy. I find discrepancy in this, and I'd like to send correspondence to the province asking that if it's unsafe, that they make it, that they demonstrate that it's unsafe, and they make it unsafe in all situations. And if it's not unsafe, then they shouldn't. I mean, when we talk about private residents, these people are the people that work in the bars. The residents of Grimsby staff the bars in Grimsby, and they staff the schools. They're the teachers. We're the healthcare professionals. We own and operate the restaurants. We write the policies, and then we administer them to keep those businesses safe. And so to look at the residents and the citizens as the province should be looking at them, and say, sorry, you're only able to do this in a monitored way, and that you can't keep people safe in your home. And so I want to send this correspondence to the province on behalf of the council. I'd appreciate support from my colleagues and your input. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I understand the intent of this, but my concern is that we're suggesting that the province apply it everywhere. And how I see it is that if you've got family getting together in a home, they're probably not applying social distancing. They're probably not wearing a mask. But when you go out to a facility like a restaurant, you're going to be wearing a mask to go into the seat. You're going to be sitting in the seat. And when you get up, you put your mask back on. And I think what the province is trying to tell us that there's been large parties where people get together and they're not practicing social distancing, and they're getting too close to each other, not wearing masks, and they're getting COVID-19. Where there hasn't been evidence of it happening in these other areas of the economy, like a restaurant or an office or wherever else. So if we want to suggest that maybe the 10 is too small, but not suggest an alternative that we do it everywhere, so if it was amended, I might be in favor of supporting it. But the way
I would accept an amendment from Councillor Dunstall to suggest either that the number be increased, or that I mean, so what I'm suggesting is kind of rhetorical, like, is that I don't think it's unsafe to be in restaurants, and I also don't think it's unsafe to be in our house with 10 people. All right, say you can have 25 people in your house, right? So I would accept an amendment. I don't know how to word it though.
Oh, okay. Well, what was it before? It was 50, and he's brought it down to 10. Maybe 25 is a better number. 10 seems like extreme, and I would agree with you. If you've got family and you're all in the same bubble and there's more than 10, that seems somewhat extreme. And so I would support something like that, but I don't like the alternative, because I don't think other areas of the economy have been the problem. So if there's some way to make a friendly amendment, I would support it.
So if I would say in the end of the third or fourth paragraph, where it says, or to reconsider the limit on only private gatherings, I would say, or to reconsider the numbers allowed in private gatherings.
Yeah, I would agree to that, but it shouldn't be the other way. If you don't get that it should be applied straight across the board.
Yeah, but I don't think they're going to take it literally. We're not giving them two options. We're just corresponding.
I understand what you're trying to do, but I don't like to imply that at all. I just don't. And let's not forget that they're using the medical officers of health to give them direction, and that's where they're getting their advice from. So there's good reason and good intent in what they're trying to do. So I don't want to be too forthright with it. But to send a message to increase it from 10 to 25, I could support.
Councillor Vane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand what Councillor Sharp's saying, and in theory, I support what he's saying. But I think what we have to look at, I think the reason this was done, and it has nothing to do with what Councillor Sharp wants to do with his family, it has to do with Brampton specifically, where you look at where they've had several parties that have been raided by the police, upwards of 200 people. So what the province has done is gone to the extreme and said, okay, we're going to limit it. What Councillor Sharp is saying makes total sense. I mean, if you've got immediate family and you feel comfortable with them, I get that. But I also get what Councillor Dunstall is saying. We cannot turn around and say, and even suggest that if you're not going to allow us to have these private settings, then we have to shut all the businesses down. I can't go with that either. So I do support Councillor Sharp in what he's saying. I think we've got to act with some common sense, which people in these other parties have not. So I get the intent, and I will support it as long as we're not going to try and impose restrictions on businesses. I would like to see Councillor Sharp's letter go forward and say that, you know what, let us make our own decisions as adults, immediate family, whatever, and deal, but still leave the province some room to deal with the clowns that are doing 200 people at a private party in a backyard. So, and where a lot of cases are coming from. And they're coming from weddings too and stuff like that. So, you know, Councillor Sharp's right. We've got to be able to meet with our family. We've got to, like, you know, it's not fair to say I can't go meet with my sister, as Councillor Sharp's saying, and her family because we're one over and we might get a $10,000 fine. Or if my parents come, suddenly we're up to 13 or 15 or whatever. I'm really torn on this one, but I think we need to be careful not to lump the businesses in with the thing that we're trying to get at. So I feel torn.
I agree with both of the previous comments, and I'd like to remove in the fourth paragraph the wording that says either limit all gatherings if it can be demonstrated that is the only way to protect all public health, or two, and then stop and leave reconsider the limit on private gatherings only to the number of 25. So let's leave the number out. I just tell them, let's say that we therefore be it resolved to send this correspondence to the Premier of Ontario asking the province to reconsider the limit on private gatherings.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I supported Councillor Sharp on this because I feel that, you know, families need to be able to get together at special occasions. I mean, as long as, I think what we need to write into this is that whoever is holding these particular small family gatherings is using all the right types of safeguards and making them responsible for, this is not like a big party type of thing, and it's really a family gathering of loved ones and that type of thing for special occasions, not big weddings, that type of thing, obviously. But I think that, I think that person should be the responsible person to ensure that all safeguards, all health things are taken care of. And if that requires them wearing a mask in there, fine, and that should be in there as well. But at least allow them to be able to do this kind of thing. And I sincerely understand where Councillor Sharp is coming from, and I agree with Councillor Vane's sentiments as well. So I'll support this, and I think those few changes will probably make it a little easier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I can understand Councillor Sharp's the family connection and how important it is at this time. I also understand the risk that's out there, especially to some of our elderly family members who do get together with us. So I think that however we look at this, I think the intent is that it becomes the social bubble again, and it's the double bubble. And that the people that are the 10 are still intended to be the ones that you basically have a really good knowledge of who they're around and who they're with. And I don't think I don't think the intent was to rotate those 10 people all the time and stuff and just different 10 people. It might be, but I thought the intent was to get back to trying to do a double bubble and ensure a little more safety with who you have around in your family, that you feel you're not putting anybody at risk. So I see both sides as well. I'll have to hear the motion again as to how it's being worded, because yeah, I think it's a little, to have one or two more family members at your Thanksgiving dinner. You don't want to have the risk that some bylaw guy is going to knock on your door. But also, if you're with those two people, I think you have to recognize that if they're not normally in your social bubble, what risk is there to them? And by having a one-time event, even whether it's a baby shower or whatever it is, you could be introducing people that you don't normally have within your bubble, that you're not fully aware of where they've reached out to a risk, an additional risk. So I think that's just something that, however, you just hope everyone's responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Sharp, you want to speak again?
Yes, Mayor Jordan. I resent the resolution to the clerk. I only deleted the sentence saying either to limit all gatherings. So it now says in that fourth paragraph, therefore be it resolved to send this correspondence to the Premier of Ontario, asking the province to reconsider the limit on only private gatherings. And so some other background. I spoke to some of my friends who are on council in West Lincoln, and they're talking about potentially bringing a resolution to the same effect. So let me tell you something. Today is my eldest son's 4th birthday. And my sister has a daughter who's 7 days younger than my eldest son. And so they're friends and cousins. And so we had William's birthday on Saturday, and Doug Ford announced that change on that at 11 that day. And so like I said, my family is 5 and my sister's family is 6, and I have 2 sisters. My 2 sisters both live together. So my one sister has her and her husband and 4 kids. My other sister has her and her son. There's actually 8 of them that live in that house. So like I can't, if I come there with my wife, we've reached the limit. I can't bring my kids with me. And it's a demonstration that the gathering limit of 10 persons it's unreasonable. It's too small. And I understand my colleague, Councillor Vane's point. They're talking about Brampton. They're talking about this party with 200 to 500 people. And so I think that's reasonable. And that's why the limits were set at 50 indoors and 100 outdoors. And a party of 200 people already surpasses that limit. So like to reduce it to only 10, in my opinion, and I hope Doug Ford is watching this, it's lip service. He's saying like, oh, and so to the poor residents, to the poor citizens of Ontario whom can't defend themselves, we don't have, so the businesses would hire a lawyer and they would sue the province and they would say, listen, we've lost enough already. I'm invested. I need these people to be allowed to move my business. And but the poor residents, the people who are sitting at their home, they can't defend themselves. And I think that it's reasonable to ask the province to reconsider the limit on only private gatherings. And I hope I have support from my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Moved by Councillor Sharp, second by Councillor Frake. Whereas the province of Ontario has reduced the size of gatherings only in private residence and not in businesses, schools, or churches, and whereas all Canadians are guaranteed the basic freedom of association, giving us the right to organize formally and informally with our loved ones and family in our private homes for birthdays, Thanksgiving, and even just family dinners, and whereas these gatherings are still permitted in Ontario, but only in monitored settings that are staffed businesses. Therefore, be it resolved that to send this correspondence to the Premier of Ontario, asking the province to reconsider the limit on only private gatherings. Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall?
Yes.
Councillor Frake?
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell?
No.
Councillor Ritchie,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
Yes.
Councillor Vane, no, Councillor Vane is yes. Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
myself, I'm yes, so that's carried. All right. Need a mover and a seconder to extend past 11. Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Cadwell. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that the Committee of the Whole meeting of September 21st extend beyond 11 p.m. All in favor? That's carried. Rec services now. Just need a mover and seconder to get rec services on the floor. Park Recreation and Culture. Councillor Frake and Councillor Bothwell. Is there anyone speaking to this? Oh, Mike. Oh, hi, Mike. Welcome tonight. Thanks for waiting. Mike, you're muted still?
Sorry.
There we go.
Thank you. Good evening. In the 2020 budget, it was put out that we wanted to do some playground replacements. So with a procurement manager and myself, we put out a tender, and we got good response from 7 different companies. And we made them have a mandatory site meeting so they could actually see the areas and the different parks and what would fit best in their design. And we came back with some really good ones. But in our report, we've recommended the one from PlaySpace Jam Bet. It came in under budget, and it was the lowest of all of the prices. And our recommendation is to go with that company for both parks.
Excellent. Councillor Bothwell?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I have no problem with these 2 parks. I understand that there's a process that the director has in prioritizing, I guess, where the need is and putting that in the budget. I just have 2 questions. One is, what is the material that is going to be used as the base for the park? Will it be changed? What is it currently? And is there any cost involved to upgrade the base material that's underneath the playground structure? And the second one is, I don't know, we haven't the whole process. I'm not sure how to do an information request. I would just like to reach out to the director to ask, based on constituents in my ward, with respect to parks that are awaiting playgrounds or something. For instance, the Azure East and Azure West, there's 2 parkettes that are awaiting some decision on, and then the Place Polonaise Park along the waterfront. I just would like, if possible, an information update as to potential timelines for any action on those 2 parks. There was some discussion with respect to Sidara Court. So I just wanted to see if we can get a quick update at the next meeting or the meeting after, as part of the Parks and Rec agenda, on the priorities for the West End. But if you could ask the question as well on the, or answer the question on the material, that would be appreciated, Mr. Graybell.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. The base would be of the treated wood chips. Currently, there's sand under the old playgrounds, which we're going to totally remove. And the wood chips are at the base. It's an approved material for impact for children. And we've decided to make the base of the playgrounds borderless. So then that way it is easier access for, making it more inclusive.
Great. Thank you. And then to the clerk, how do I go about doing that information request?
Sir, it's already been added.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Very excited for this. Again, when I campaigned, I took my two daughters around in Ward 1, and we ranked and rated every single park in the ward. And Sydney Court Park has been in need of replacement for quite some time. I have constituents that regularly email me about this park. I'm very glad to see this go forward. And thank you very much for this report.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie.
Councillor Dunstall?
Your worship, through you to Mike. I'm looking at Pinewood Park. I used to own a home in that area. That's Sandra Crescent, Saks, and Central, right? And you're replacing the playground equipment. The one thing I noticed about it's a few years ago now, there was no park benches. There was no place to sit. Is that still the case? Is there any place for parents who take their kids to these playground equipment to have a chance to sit on a bench?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dunstall, that is part of our plan as well. Once the playground is installed in the park itself, we're going to put a few benches in there facing the playground, and new trash receptacle with recycling aspect to it. And and new signage as well. So this is all part of our parks renewal plan moving forward. Tree planting, the whole gambit. We're really excited.
Oh, that's exciting, because yeah, the last time I remember being at that park, I saw the kids playing, but nobody could sit down anywhere. So I thought, wow, we're missing something here. So good for you guys to catch that and take care of it. I appreciate that. And I have a real pet peeve about those 45-gallon drums as garbage cans. So I'm glad to see you're replacing those with proper receptacles. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councillor Vardy?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Mike, how do people get into Pinewood Park? Because I didn't see any on the map that you showed us, any sort of direct entrance from the street.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are 4 different entrances into Pinewood Park, and they're very difficult to see. And we're looking at adding signage to each one of those entryways there, so that way it actually shows that there is a park there.
Okay. All right. That's my question. It just looked like almost like a private park for the houses that were there.
Yeah, it really does. But
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan. Through you to Mike. Good to see Mike. I was in the park today on Pinewood, and as you mentioned, there are 4 entrances, one off every street that borders the park. To Councillor Dunstall, I took a picture, and I'm looking at it right now. There's an old picnic table that's sitting not too far off from the playground area. And I'll tell you, for a small park, there's a lot of amenities in there. There's the playground area. There's 2 soccer posts that are probably maybe 50 yards apart. And there's also a basketball court, which probably could facilitate to be a tennis court too, like the park over on off Olive Street there. But glad to hear you're moving forward with the playground equipment there, Mike, because it's definitely, again, looking at my photo and being in there today, it's quite aged. So good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bothwell, we're just, the clerk wanted clarification on what parks you want to, an update on.
Basically, you can say the West End and the Waterfront Trail Place Polonaise Park. So there's the Azure East, Azure West, and the Waterfront Park at Place Polonaise. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification, and thank you for your presentation, Mike. Seeing no further questions, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bothwell. Resolved that report DRS 20-06 dated September 21st, 2020 be received, and that the tendered playground for Pinewood Park in the amount of $68,090.66 plus HST be awarded to Open Space Solutions of Wellesley, Ontario, and that the tendered playground for Cindy Court Park in the amount of $67,742.10 plus HST be awarded to Open Space Solutions of Wellesley, Ontario. Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall?
Yes.
Councillor Frake?
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes.
Councillor Vane?
Yes.
Councillor Vardy?
Yes.
Myself, I'm a yes, so that's carried. Where are we at now? All right. We're up to 9.1 on our agenda. Just need a. All right. Is Brandon going to speak on this? Yeah, I just need a mover and seconder, and then Brandon will come on to speak on this. Councillor Dunstall moved, seconder. Councillor Cadwell. Welcome, Brandon.
Mayor, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to make a decision on Mr. Drote's appeal of staff's decision to deny his request for a site alteration permit application. So as you may remember, staff had brought a report to Council back in July, report number DPW 2022. Mr. Drote also appeared as a delegation before Council at that same meeting to plead his case. At this meeting, Council agreed to defer the decision to a later date in order to provide Mr. Drote an opportunity to provide evidence as to the purpose of the berm. Specifically, Mr. Drote was asked to demonstrate how the construction of the berm would maintain or improve the agricultural capacity of his property, as this was the key point in staff's decision to deny Mr. Drote's application. Following the meeting, Mr. Drote submitted a letter outlining the purpose of the berm. This letter is included as part of the agenda as Appendix C. Staff have reviewed this letter and feel that our previous decision to deny Mr. Drote's application should remain. We do not believe that Mr. Drote has provided sufficient reason to justify that the berm result in an agricultural capacity of the property either being maintained or improved upon. Again, therefore we have determined that the work is not permitted under the bylaw, and that the owner should be required to remove the fill within a reasonable time frame at the director's discretion. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Brandon. Councillor Bothwell?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I can understand staff's position on this. I just wondered if at the last discussion we had, I mentioned whether or not the berm could be relocated to the biodigester property next door. Do you know if there was any discussions with the biodigester owners, and if there's a potential that he's given the opportunity to move the fill as requested off-site, that he could work to negotiate that with the neighboring property?
Again, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. That is a viable option. However, I mean, I can't suggest that to the owner other than I'm reviewing the owner's application, and in terms of the material staying on site, that's what I've been asked to do, determine if the material can go there or not. So again, I agree that that is a viable option. The choice before us right now, or the decision before us right now, is to decide whether or not that material can stay on Mr. Drote's property. The next step beyond that would be okay, what are the options to remove that if council agrees with our decision to deny his permit application.
Thank you. Councillor Cadwell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan, and through you to Brandon. When Mr. DeRose was a delegation, he was talking about with the berm, the use of the berm to help him growing organic crops. So in any was there any more conversation with you or with staff, Brandon, that you seem to be quite had a very strong passion to wanting to grow organic crops, and he thought that the berm would assist the growth of the crop. So was that brought into discussion any further at all, or just curious to that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, through, if you look at his correspondence back to us. So essentially, in response to the last meeting, we had sent a letter to Mr. Drost indicating that, specifically, we need you to justify to us that the reason for the berm and justify that it's not going to impact the agricultural capacity of your land. So he provided a letter in response. Essentially, in his letter, he's talking about using the berm, at least the way I take it, as a more of a landscape feature. He does talk about a windbreak, but again, to me, the intent really here is to use it as a visual buffer, a landscape berm, more than it is to have anything to do with agricultural uses. Again, that's my take on the letter and conversations with Mr. Drost. So that's how I am looking at his response and with respect to his application.
Thank you, Brandon. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So I've spoken to this resident, Mr. Drost, and he seems to want some buffer between him and the biodigester. That seems to be reasonable. What is the zoning of the biodigester site? Is it different than the site he's on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, correct. I don't know the specific zoning, but I have talked to planning and they've indicated that a berm on the biodigester site would be an acceptable use. The issue there is it would have to go through the proper process, the approval process, right? Just like, just because it's an acceptable use doesn't mean it doesn't have to get approved, right? So is there an opportunity? Is that a good option? I think so. Can I order Mr. Drost, or can we as council order Mr. Drost to talk to the neighbor? No, I guess that's where I'm forced with assessing the decision based on what is happening on Mr. Drost's property. Once we decide whether we agree with his permit application or not, that's where I think the next step would be, okay, we're going to give you a certain amount of time to determine what you're going to do with this material. We've agreed that it's not acceptable use on your site. One of your options may be to reach out to your neighbor to see if that would be an alternative to you. So all you have to do is move it across the property line. That being said, there still has to be a appropriate process for that to happen, whether that's through a site plan or the site alteration bylaw itself.
So what I'm getting from this is that it's okay on this side of the line, but it's not okay on that side of the line. So you would say my neighbor's allowed to build a fence, but I'm not allowed to build a fence. And so like we talk about, is it appropriate? And it seems like it might be appropriate, right? It's because it's okay on the other side of the property line. So he's building a visual buffer. And he says there's also, I think there's more than one use of it. I think maybe he focuses on the visual, but he also mentioned what was it? Organic farming. And so whether he emphasized that or the other, but I'm getting off track here because you told me it's okay on the other side of the property line. So it's like, is it okay or is it not okay? And to me, it sounds like it's something that's acceptable. It sounds like he has more than one reason for building that berm, and that it would be acceptable if he moved it 100 feet over. Bless you. So I would vote that yes, he can leave the berm. It's already there. There's no need to move it. There's no need to make Miller apply to take his dirt. The dirt's already there, and he should plant some trees on it and use it like it would be on the other side of the property line. He lives next door to an industrial waste site. And he lives on the site. He's also a farmer, but he also lives there, and so I think that we should allow it.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I may, so just with respect to the comment about, all we're doing is moving it across the property line, the difference is the zoning of that property, of Mr. Dro's property, is an agricultural use. The zoning of the industrial site is an industrial use. I don't know the exact zoning. So it's no different than saying, well, we're not putting a school on an industrial zone property is the way I'm looking at it. So unfortunately, it sounds silly that we're moving it across the property line, but those are the rules that have been established in terms of the zoning and the site plan the site alteration bylaw.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. I've made up my mind, and I'm going to vote that the berm should stay. Thank you.
Councillor Vane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Councillor Sharp helped me clarify something about the line, but I also see Brandon's point of view. Brandon, how far from the line is he with this berm?
I don't have an exact measurement. It looks like it's right on the property line. It's my understanding it's in the piles right now, bermed up essentially along, I think it's like a 230 meter stretch of land. So, excuse me. So is it, maybe the toe of the berm starts at the property line? Again, I don't have the exact distance. It would have to be surveyed. And at this point, we haven't made him or asked him to provide a proper survey or anything like that. Really, the intent here was to look at whether or not we would actually approve this before we put him in the, gave him direction to spend more money to, do a survey and other things.
I'm a very law and order kind of guy. That's my career. I've been like that my whole career, my whole life. Rules are put in place for a reason. While I totally agree with Councillor Sharp, and initially I was inclined to agree with Councillor Sharp, but if we start allowing this person to just break the rules, where do we start drawing a line? So rules are for a reason. So as much as I do support what Councillor Sharp's saying, I'm going to vote in favor of what you're saying, Brandon. Thank you.
Anyone want to speak a first time?
No.
All right, Councillor Dunstall, and then Councillor Bothwell if no one wants to speak a first time.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just looking for some clarification from Brandon. And which came first, the berm or the new site alteration bylaw that we have in place now? Did he have the berm there for some time, or I can't remember. Can you help me?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the chain of events here was the berm occurred after the moratorium was in place. I believe before the bylaw was in place. So we had to issue a stop work order to him and indicated to him, listen, you need to stop. There is no bylaw in place. Once the bylaw is in place, we will review your application and we'll determine whether or not this is an acceptable use. So again, that's.
Well, he didn't apply for anything in the first place. He just went ahead.
He didn't, no. And again, there's circumstances around. I think I talked about this at the previous meeting, and I'm compassionate for the situation he's in. Look, I don't take any pleasure in telling the guy he's going to have to move, that dirt. But at the same time, I've been asked to administer a bylaw, and when I look at the bylaw and the what's happened to date, I'm forced to say that he's broken the rules, and in order to correct that process, there is an avenue that he has to remove the material. So I mean, I guess again, that's my recommendation that I'm bringing forward.
At least he has an alternative if he talks to his neighbor. And yeah, okay. Thank you for your answer.
Councillor Vardy, then Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Vardy, you're muted.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. What a reason, I mean, I'm quite sympathetic to Mr. Drost's dilemma. But given how much Phil has been in the news, discussed at council, and issue for people on the mountain, would a reasonable person have known, and I'm not saying he's not reasonable, but would it be reasonable to think that one would know you'd need a permit to do something like that?
I'm sorry, is that a question to me?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
you think
so,
most people on the mountain would know they'd need a permit for Phil?
again, I would think so, but at the same time, I can't speak to, you know, I think what I had said at the last meeting, there's circumstances here where we've been chasing these people in terms of the offenders around all summer. You know, we tell them no somewhere, they pop up at another property. They what we have found is they are eloquent in talking to the property owners. You know, don't worry about it. This is no problem. We've talked to the town, whatever. This is not a big deal. You know, your agriculture property, you don't have to worry about it. Whatever the terms were, and I think they've somewhat conned these property owners into accepting this material, not knowing the ramifications. And so I don't know to say, you know, should he be aware? Yes. Is ignorance of the law a defense? No. Should we be compassionate? Yes, but at the same time, the rules have been broken. So, you know, it's hard to say. He is the kind of this property is one of the first ones who is coming under the new bylaw, and unfortunately, our decision here could set a precedent either way. My worry about is if we say yes, is, well, we're running into the situation that the people will do the work, ask for forgiveness later, and then we'll, you know, we'll sort it out later. So and again, my understanding is under the previous bylaw, berms were a big issue. So do we want to accept that a berm is an acceptable use on an agricultural property, really? So you're taking space which is essentially used for growing and planting landscaping there. So those are kind of the things that I have thought about in making that decision.
All right, well, thank you. I mean, I have the same concern that, you know, if we let it go, and I'm sympathetic, but if we let it go, then the next guy comes and says, so I didn't know. And then it sets a precedent, and then we've got no leg to stand on. So, okay, thank you, Brandon.
You're welcome.
Councillor Bothwell, then Councillor Frake, then Councillor Ritchie.
All right, thank you. Just again, as Councillor Vardy was saying, and Brandon, it's going to set a precedent, and people are going to say, I don't like the look of my neighbor's property. I don't like all the junky cars there, and I want to put on some landscaping, so I'll do a berm. So I think it is, this one, unfortunately, is a test case, but there's a whole lot more I think that we're going to see where people just say, hey, I just don't like the look of the property I have to look at. There is case law on the Normal Farm Practices Board. There's one in Burlington. There was a horse farm that did it for the CN rail tracks, I think, put a berm in, and they were told they had to stop. I think there is case law on not just the berm on agricultural property because it's convenient. So I appreciate the work you put into it. It is a very, very difficult situation, and I hope he can work it out with his neighbor. Thank you.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Brandon, for bringing this forward again. Yeah, I tend to agree with most of my colleagues. I mean, we've fought hard and long to restrict this type of thing, and I don't know the real story behind this gentleman. Whether this is, I don't know if this is going to affect his livelihood or not. I don't know. But at the same time, we have a rule in place. We have a law in place. And I think we have to stick to that. So I will certainly support your recommendation. But one question for you, though, is he actually the owner of this property?
My understanding, yes, yes. He's not an agent. He is the owner of the property.
Okay. Anyways, thanks for the report, and I think we have to put a stake in the ground, and I think we can set any precedents by not accepting what you're saying. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. My question is just I wanted to clarify something that. So our moratorium for the bylaw had ended, and we had not passed a bylaw when this took place. Is that correct?
So the moratorium on site alterations, so I've got this in the report laid out. It's a bit of a timeline. So the moratorium on site alterations was put into effect July 9th, 2019. Staff received a complaint on May 11th, 2020, that the soil was being imported. We issued a verbal warning to cease at that time. Received another complaint in June 8th, that the soil was being imported and deposited. And then we issued an order on June 11th. So there was a verbal and then followed up with a written complaint a matter of a month later. So,
right. And then when do we, sorry, I apologize for not
no problem.
knowing the exact dates there. And we made a decision on the new bylaw at what time?
So the new bylaw, where are we? So the new moratorium went into effect on July 30th. Council approved the new soil alteration bylaw on May 19th, 2020. So the provisions came in effect in June. So he was, this occurred, the initial complaint occurred and the initial warning occurred during the moratorium.
Right.
And then the order was issued following the bylaw coming into effect.
Okay. So yeah, so the order, but the fill was already there before the came into effect. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at. I think my personal opinion is that the individual has been a good citizen. He's always wanted to work with the town. I do not believe this would be precedent setting, as this was done before our new bylaw came into effect. It would be almost like it was be a problem with our moratorium in the previous bylaw. Yeah, anyways, but that's just my opinion, is that I don't think that it would set a precedent. It would not set a standard for this, because these rules were not in effect when he dumped. They came into effect after the fact. So I don't think that would affect future cases moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So the other point to consider here is that one of the reasons why we implemented this bylaw was because of the amount of trucks that we've had on our roads that affect traffic and also affects our roads. And this dirt is already there since before the bylaw. And so let's say that his neighbor doesn't want to file an application for fill, and that they don't want to take that dirt onto their property, which is a reasonable thing to consider. That puts all this dirt back on the road. All right, so my colleague Councillor Ritchie has said that technically it did happen before the bylaw was in place, so it's not exactly precedent setting. Although it is, I understand my other colleagues and the director's point that this is the first application that we're going to have to deny, and potentially we would set a precedent, but it is an individual case, and all of them would be individual. But let's say this puts another 200 trucks on the road, or how many meters of material? Is there an approximation?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we're estimating about 180,000. Sorry, 18,000.
18,000. So
180 trucks.
Yeah, 180 trucks. So, it's almost counterproductive, right? Is that we're going to put 180 trucks on the road full of dirt, to take that berm off of his property. And my points earlier, but because this happened before the bylaw, there's some difference between the precedent that would be set, and I don't want to put another 200 trucks on the road, right? That's going to be like starting when? And I mean, it'll probably be next spring by the time we can actually get it done.
And that's reasonable.
So another 200 trucks whipping around. I mean, it's like you don't want to do it twice. That's all. Thanks.
Councillor Vane.
Sorry to put you through this, Brandon. I know it's late, buddy. Okay, sorry, a couple of things. First of all, a very simple question. Have we ever thought of, and this may sound too simplistic, but have we ever thought of sending or delivering notices to people on the mountain who have the farms and say, be aware, if you take this fill, you will be asked to remove it, or at least educate people? At least we're doing our part. So these slick con men come in and say, oh, don't worry, I've talked to the town. He's got a notice that says, oh, no, this is who I call, I'll ask them. They said no, goodbye. Having said that, now I'm a little confused here because Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Sharp have said that, and you haven't denied it, is that he did this prior to the bylaw. If he did it prior to the bylaw, then I am concerned if we're being punitive. Having said that, though, and what Councillor Sharp said, and you've said that he could potentially be right on the borderline, and Councillor Sharp's raised the concern about 180 trucks, could he not bring in a bulldozer and push it over if the biodigester says it's okay? Could he not bulldoze it 3 feet over?
Okay. Sorry,
go ahead.
So I was going to say on the first question with respect to the dates again, when he started the work, it was under the moratorium, which again is against the rules. We put in a moratorium saying you cannot move fill.
That's fine. Say no more. Yep.
And the second, the bylaw came into effect June 1st, he was still doing work. He was issued a warning during the moratorium, and he was issued the written order after the bylaw came into effect. So he's essentially, he broke the alteration moratorium and he broke the alteration bylaw. In terms of bulldozing, again, yes, that is an alternative, but it has to go through the appropriate approval. So maybe the biodigester doesn't want to burn. So it'd be a matter of the biodigester wanting that need, or the owner of that property wanting that need, and working out an agreement between the two of them to take a bulldozer or whatever earth moving equipment to shift it to the opposite side of the property line, or maybe they want to move it towards the closer to the site, so to the actual industrial site. There's a bit of a buffer in between the industrial area and the property.
What about the idea of sending notices, though, to landowners on the mountain? Is that a possibility? I mean, it's just, this is not the first person we've had to deal with this kind of issue where they want to bring in soil. Is there not some way that we can notify these people so we're not constantly wasting hours and hours of your time and council time to tell people, no, the rules are there, you didn't check, well, he's told me a story, and then we go and say, well, sorry, the rules are there, and you're right, there is no excuse. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. Yeah. And that's what I've always believed. So yeah, I agree with that, but can we at least try and educate? Can we do that?
Yes, sorry. Again, have we sent notices out to the residents? No. Have we had a communication campaign in terms of posting the information on the newspaper, on our website? If you remember, I don't know the exact time frame, but early on in this process, in terms of earlier this year, we put the whole bylaw out for public consultation, right? So we did post it in the newspaper. We did put it on our website. So again, that was part of the communication campaign to which under council's direction was to let's make sure we get some feedback from the public on this bylaw. So can we send out letters to all the residents? I'm sure we can. Have we done that yet? No.
Okay, while I do sympathize with what Councillor Rich and Councillor Sharp are saying, I'm still going to stick by and support what you're saying. I think that, you know, we've got to be careful. I disagree that we wouldn't be setting a precedent. If he did this in violations of the original moratorium and then in violation of the thing and actually had to have a stop work order issued, then yes, I think he's shown clear disrespect for our rules. So yes, I will support what you're putting forward. Thank you.
Brandon, just a clarification before Councillor Dunstall. He was issued a verbal warning in May then and continued till the written warning?
Yeah, so we, again, just we've got received a complaint on May 11th. Soil was being imported and deposited at 442 Sobey. Staff attended the location, issued a verbal warning to cease and discontinue importing fill, and indicated to the owner that they would need to apply for a permit once the new bylaw was in place. Staff received another complaint on June 8th, 2020, that the soil was being imported and deposited at 442 Sobey. An order was issued by bylaw enforcement on June 11th, requiring an owner to immediately cease and to discontinue the importation of fill. From there, then he submitted his notice of fill form when the new bylaw was in place.
Great, thanks for that clarification. Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to beat this up, but a couple of questions. One, have we any idea if he originally intended to build the berm, or did somebody come along and offer him some clean fill at a certain price? In other words, did he go out and buy this clean fill to build the berm, or did somebody come along and say, I've got 100 and so many loads, and I'll give you so much a load if I could dump it on your property? Do we have that kind of information, or is that something we don't know?
Sure. So the first letter that we received from him, which was in the previous report, I think is shown as Appendix B. So that's a letter from July 8th.
Yeah.
And essentially he says, I was approached by so-and-so from an excavating company who said that he had clean fill that was approved to be dumped in Grimsby. For some time, I've wanted to construct a berm along the west property line for the following reasons. So he talks about acting as a windbreak, a visual appeal, a fence, hunting turkey on the property. I was told by York Excavating that the fill was allowed to be dumped and it was clean material coming from a site in Grimsby, so I did not think it'd be an issue. I was unaware of the site alteration bylaw until I was approached by town staff after already receiving a significant number of loads. So I can go on, but I think that answers your question.
So yeah, no, that definitely answers the question. In other words, he was paid to receive those loads, and
I don't know. I don't know if it's a money thing or it's hey, we have this dirt, do you want it, right? The money side of things, the way I understand it, is you have a developer who is paying a contractor to get rid of dirt. The contractor that's getting paid to get rid of the dirt makes his profit by not having to pay to get rid of that dirt. He takes it to a free dumping site and he pockets more money. So that's where he makes his money. So are there cases where, you know, there's money changed hands between the trucking company and the owner? There may be that case. Difficult to prove, but that could be an option too.
Yeah. So, in other words, he wasn't out looking to build a berm initially. Somebody came along, so he thought he'd always wanted to have one. Let's go ahead and do it now that we've got clean fill.
According to his statements, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your thank you.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan. I think we all have compassion to this unfortunate situation. I was up at the house when in the early part of it, speaking to the landowner, and I just feel he's a victim of the fill operator. I'm not going to get into what was exactly said to him, but my understanding that the fill was given to him. He didn't receive any money for the fill. It's just unfortunate that the process wasn't followed properly, because I don't feel that there was any attempt to negatively do anything wrong, but again, I just feel he was a victim of a fill operator. So thank you for your report, Brendan. Yeah, it's getting late. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Frick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After hearing new information from everybody around the table there, I'm beginning to change my mind a little. The dirt is already there, and I'm hearing Councillor Sharp's sentiments. I mean, to get another 180, 200 trucks going there to pull this away, I think is the wrong thing to do. I do believe now, after hearing more information, that this gentleman was taken advantage of by the developers, and the only big winner here was the developer, as far as I can see. And especially if this gentleman wasn't being paid anything for the taking of this fill. So I think he might just be a victim of circumstance, a victim, and maybe we just leave the fill there, but going forward, he cannot put any more in there. So I think we just have to err on the side of compassion a little bit here, because I mean, this guy is probably a struggling farmer, and I think that we need to show a little compassion here. And I think that I'm going to change my mind on this thing. Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell.
I don't know if it's struggling farmer in the sense that, if we remember, he sold his property to the biodigester with the assistance of Tony Quirk helping him to do that, acting on both parties as both parties. So I don't know if the struggling farmer thing is it, but yeah, I still have concerns about it. Thank you.
All right, I think we've exhausted debate on this. I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that report DPW 20-29 dated September 21st, 2020 regarding the request for appeal of decision to deny site alteration permit request for 442 Selby Road be received, and the owner's appeal be denied, and the owner be issued a written order under Part 12 of the bylaw to remove the fill within a reasonable time frame as determined by the Director of Public Works. Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall?
I'm going to say no.
Councillor Frake?
I'm also going to say no.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
No.
Councillor Sharp?
No.
Councillor Vane?
Yes.
Councillor Vardy? Councillor Vardy?
Yes.
Myself, I'm a yes, so that's carried. We're going to take a 5-minute recess right now. I think we've gone another 3 hours. Welcome back, everyone. We'll continue along with our agenda. We're at item 9.1B, report DPW 20-31, Livingston Avenue Extension, EA Part 2, order request, notice of decision. Brandon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is essentially to provide counsel with respect to the decision made by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks concerning the Part 2 order review requested by the town into the Livingston Avenue Extension environmental assessment. In May of this year, council directed staff to seek legal assistance from the town's lawyer in making submissions to MOECC. Town submission of the Part 2 request was made on July 3rd. The MECP decision was provided on August 31st. A copy of that decision is provided in Appendix A. The MEC indicated that the recent changes to the EA process the province would now limit Part 2 order requests only to adverse impacts related to Aboriginal or treaty rights. As the town's request did not fall within the scope, our request was rejected. We've reviewed the decision with our lawyer who felt that the additional appeal to the ministry would not be successful. And essentially at this point, we feel our legal options under the EA have been exhausted. And if its council so wishes to carry this forward, we would think maybe the most appropriate course of action is through our representation on regional council.
Thank you, Brandon. Councillor Vane.
Brandon, when we passed this order, did that law already exist about the Aboriginals? Or did that rule already exist?
My understanding is, based on the lawyer, is that we missed the deadline by a few days. I think it was less than a week or something like that.
So it still existed though when we did pass this rule, right? I'm trying to figure out if we didn't do our homework here. Like, we just wasted a lot of money putting this order in, and I'm just wondering if maybe we didn't do our homework and we needed more due diligence.
Sorry, I don't know how to answer that.
That's fine.
Other than what the lawyer had indicated to me was that we missed the window by four days.
Okay, it just seems like a waste of money again. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bothwell.
Okay, so it's not a waste of money. We did what our community wanted us to do. We put our foot down and said the road's not going through. We filed the Part 2 order. The deadline was July 6th. The province introduced Bill 197 on July 8th. They passed it on July 22nd without any public consultation. There's a couple community groups right now going after the government for not having the 30-day required public engagement on that bill. So no, we didn't. We missed the window in the sense that we got caught up in the 19 Part 2 orders that had been filed that were waiting for the minister to make his decision within the 13-week window he had to make it. So from the date that we filed, July 3rd, I filed my 28-page submission on July 6th. So I got the same letter, and I'm quite disappointed as well. And what he did was he changed the whole game plan. He changed the rules of the definition of what the criteria would be for a Part 2 order, with restricting it only to Aboriginal treaty rights. At the time we filed, it had a specific requirement about how it had to meet certain criteria. We met that in our filing. I met that in my filing. And then he changed the game plan through this bill and just said, oh, we're now making it a different rule. No transition. He provided transition, the Premier provided transition in that bill for other sections of Section 6 of the Environmental Assessment Act. And yet he provided no transition for Part 2 order requests that were pending ministerial review, that were already halfway or 3/4 through the waiting period for the minister to make the decision. Had the minister received those on July 3rd and acted quickly and swiftly, the decision could have been made before July 22nd when the bill was received royal assent. So within that window, at any time, the minister could have made a decision on our Part 2 order requests, but it was kind of convenient that he sat on them and waited until this bill was passed, those 19 Part 2 orders. So I'm frustrated, yes. No, we didn't do anything that we could have foreseen. This was thrown a curveball at quite a number of people and environmental activists. And it's significantly impacting and devastating the public's ability to contribute to environmental assessments and protect the environment through this new bill. It's removed a lot of opportunity and rights for the public to have engagement, and now there isn't any at all almost. So I think everything that was done that could be done was done. And I think now it is up to our regional representatives to continue to lobby the region to tell them what this council wants and our community wants, which is not to have the road go through. And we just have to continue to be vigilant on sending that message. I have responded to the minister through the MPP on my own for my own Part 2 order, and as well in emails myself with respect to the lack of transition for pending Part 2 orders that did not receive a response from the minister. So I agree with where we need to go with this, which is just to have our regional representatives advocate for us. But again, I am extremely disappointed, but there's nothing we could have done differently to have a different outcome. Thank you.
Just further to Councillor Bothwell's comments, definitely that's our sentiment at the region, and we'll be pushing our town's decision at the region. Both Councillor Furtick and myself have already and will continue to make the Livingston Avenue extension, well knowing that no one is in favor of it. This is one thing that we all can agree on. Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, I just need a mover and seconder for this motion. Councillor Frey, Councillor Cadwell. Moved by Councillor Frey, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolve that report DPW 20-31 dated September 21st, 2020, and the notice of decision letter from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks dated August 31st be received. Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall?
Yes, 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 yes. Yes.
Councillor Frake?
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes.
Councillor Vane?
Yes.
Councillor Vardy?
Yes.
Myself, I'm a yes, that's carried. Moving on to section 9.1C, report DPW 20-32, supply and delivery for 2 new combination dump body spreader tandem axle trucks complete with reversible plow and wing. Brandon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, the purpose of this report is to get council's approval to award the purchase of 2 new snowplows to Metro Freightliner Hamilton Limited. The new plows would be ordered this year, but given the lead time, they'll likely not be ready until late 2021 or possibly early 2022. There is a long lead time on snowplows, so we do order them in advance. The total value of the purchase is $534,356, excluding HST, so it's roughly $267,000 a unit. We had budgeted originally $250,000 for each vehicle. There is adequate money to cover the difference. Again, this is funded from our equipment, Public Works Equipment Reserve, which is self-funded through self-rental fees. The reason for the overage is we originally had planned on just replacing the trucks with a single rear axle vehicles. We felt it was important to upgrade the 2 escarpment vehicles to tandem axles. They have better traction on the escarpment accesses. They also have a larger dump body, which allows them to haul more material for a longer period of time. So as you can imagine, they have to go to the far ends of the town. So we felt that it was more appropriate, more efficient for them to have to fill up less often. Therefore, again, another one of the reasons why we decided to upgrade to the tandem vehicles. So again, we're asking for approval for award to Metro Freight Hamilton Limited in the amount of $534,356, excluding HST and tax. Any questions?
Thank you, Brandon. Just a mover and seconder before we have a discussion. Councillor Frey, Councillor Cadwell. Any discussion? I just want to make a small comment that the, I guess it's $15,000 extra or $17,000 extra for each tandem axle is money well spent, in my opinion. The fact that the tandem axles will have a longer lifespan and they're going to make less trips to the yard just makes a lot of sense. Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Jordan, through you to Brandon. Well, again, I read the report and it's just truck replacements, and I'm just curious to know, I guess I'm asking Brandon, do we foresee adding another plow to the fleet because of the growth in Grimsby, adding any additional plow routes which might need to facilitate another truck? So this is, again, clarification. This is just replacement. And
Sure.
I totally agree with Mayor Jordan with the investment in the dual axles. We need it for the mountain. That's all good reasons. So thank you for the report.
You're welcome. So through you, Mr. Mayor, oh man, I lost my train of thought. The question again, Dave. Sorry, Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, sorry, Brad, I'm just hitting that mute button, mute me. Do you foresee a?
Oh, yeah, sorry. As soon as you said it, I caught it. So we are, sorry, again.
Already, no problem.
It's late at night, so I'm still trying to stay awake. So we have put two vehicles in our development charge studies, which is currently under review. So we do plan on adding one additional plow to our fleet in the next few years. Obviously, it's going to take some lead time to order that vehicle. There will be a staffing implication as well to it. So we didn't feel that it made sense to bring that forward next year. So we're looking at least 2-3 years down the road. The idea there would be, again, we'd add a piece of equipment and staff to the fleet to help augment the amount of times that are, the amount of hours that our guys are on the road, guys and girls are on the road operating their vehicles. So you add one more to the fleet, spreads the work around, makes it a little bit easier to manage in a reasonable time frame. We're also planning on adding one additional sidewalk snowplow to our route as well. In the next few years. Again, we're trying to be cognizant of not bringing this forward in a difficult year. We're trying to keep our increases down. So although the equipment would be funded through the development charges, the staffing complement wouldn't. So again, we're cognizant of not throwing this at council in a difficult budget year that we expect coming up next year. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes.
Now that I remember it.
Yeah, very good answer. Good future planning, Brandon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Seeing no further questions, moved by Councillor Frick, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that report DPW 20-32 dated September 21st, 2020 regarding the award of contract 2020-009 PW supply and delivery for 2 new combination dump body spreader tandem axle trucks complete with reversible plow and wing be received, and that contract 2020-009 PW be awarded to Metro Freightliner Hamilton Limited, with the town of Grimsby's portion in the amount of $534,356, excluding HST and the miscellaneous taxes, as approved in the 2020 Public Works Capital Transportation Budget. Councillor Bothwell?
Could I have a clarification, Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Could you note that report number again? Because I think it sounded wrong to me.
It's 2020 and it's got, unless it's a typo.
A32.
Yeah, so it's, all right, yeah, so it's a type. Oh, the contract, it's I think you're mistaking the contract number. The contract number is 2020-009 PW.
But the report is DPW 2032.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall?
Yes.
Councillor Frake?
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes.
Counselor Vane,
Yes.
Counselor Vardy,
Yes.
myself, yes, that's carried. All right, we're on correspondence now. Mover and seconder, and then I'll read through it. Counselor Ritchie, Counselor Frake. Moved by Counselor Ritchie, second by Counselor Frake. Whereas Rail Safety Week is to be held across Canada from September 21st to 27th, 2020, and whereas it is in the public's interest to raise citizens' awareness of the dangers of ignoring safety warnings at level crossings and trespassing on rail property to reduce avoidable deaths, injuries, and damage caused by incidents involving trains and citizens. And whereas Operation Lifesaver is a public-private partnership whose aim is to work with the public, rail industry, governments, police services, media, and others to raise rail safety awareness, and where CN has requested that the Town Council adopt this resolution in support of its ongoing efforts to raise awareness, save lives, and prevent injuries in communities, including our municipality. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Grimsby support National Rail Safety Week held from September 21st to September 20th, 2020. Questions or comments? Seeing none, Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
Yes.
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell, Councillor Ritchie,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
Yes.
Councillor Vane,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
myself, yes, that's carried. Need a mover and seconder for the rest of the correspondence. Councillor Dunstall, Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the correspondence received under the Administration and Finance with reference to support the City of Toronto and their legal challenge to amendments made under Bill 184, long-term care homes, endorsement of Bill 164, Protecting Vulnerable Persons in Supportive Living Accommodations Act, 2019, and Grimsby Fire Department Project Zero notification letter and survey on Zero Reg 157.20 work deployment measures for municipalities, and that the correspondence received under the Planning and Development with reference to the request for comments, proposed regional official plan amendment 18, Northwest Welland urban boundary expansion and parkland dedication development charges and community benefits charges authority be received. Just show of hands on this, all in favor? That's carried. All right, now we're moving into our regular meeting. That's it. Oh, sorry. I'm rushing ahead. The next committee of the whole meeting is scheduled for October 5th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. at the Town Hall Council Chambers, 160 Livingston Avenue.
Just a quick question here, Jordan, on
Yes.
the last item under planning and development, the correspondence. I don't see that we passed the parkland dedication development charges and the Welland urban boundary.
Yes, the clerk said that that's been passed.
Okay.
I think that was in that resolution. All right. So the committee of the whole meeting is adjourned. The council meeting of September 21st will commence shortly. And do we need a motion to start that? No. All right. Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break. It's on? All right, it is. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Grimsby Council meeting of Monday, September 21st, 2020. I call this meeting to order, and we're going to start with playing of the national anthem. Welcome back. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have approval of the agenda. Need a mover and seconder to approve the agenda. Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the agenda for the council meeting of September 21st, 2020 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for adoption of the previous minutes. Councillor Frake, Councillor Bothwell. Any discussion? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bothwell. Resolved that the minutes from the special council meeting of August 17th, August 27th, September 10th, and September 15th, and the minutes from the regular council meeting of August 17th, and the minutes from the committee of the whole meeting on September 21st be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Delegations, Councillor Frake, Purditch, would you like to speak now?
I would certainly like to speak. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity. It's only been 7 hours that I've had to wait for you. I'm just going to touch on a few points. The first one, of course, is Niagara Regional Transit, and it's well underway, and it's doing very well. One of the things that we talked about at the region was the decriminalization of drugs. Now, remember, this is a federal matter. This has been referred back to the subcommittee to come forward with a lot more information, of course, that we got the other night, simply because this is really something that's new, and we certainly need a lot more clarification about that particular topic. Of course, we all know that we have the mask bylaw that's been approved, and it's going through to the 1st of April of 2021. The reason that April was picked was because it's going to go over the flu season. It's going to carry us, hopefully, over Christmas and whatnot. And it should bring us to the end of, and we're hoping it's the end of the virus, but you know what? We don't know. I guess everybody's guessing. But we just felt it was a better to have it where we can turn around and rescind the bylaw at our discretion, of course, with the approval of science and Dr. Hirji, of course, in getting to us and telling us your name. So that's why we had put it off until the 1st of April. A lot of people wanted us to just go to the end of December, but we didn't want to turn around and readdress it right in the middle of the flu season. Just to try and answer Councillor Cadwell's question in reference to the exemption for fees. Mayor Jordan and I will certainly get that answer for you. And I would think that there must be some sort of exemption, because if the municipality is getting rid of some of the taxes, that I'm sure that the region would consider something like that too. The only other thing is the official plan of the region. If you go on the regional site, you'll see that you can have the input to the official plan, and I would suggest that you go have a look at it and at least see what some of the proposals and if there's any changes in reference to Grimsby. So I would suggest you go directly there. Unless there's something that comes up, then Mayor Jordan and I would be in touch with you. Somebody asked about the infrastructure tonight, and I hope you don't mind, Mayor, but I had asked that specific question at the Public Works meeting. As a matter of fact, if you're reading the newspaper last week, you'll find that St. Catharines Standard actually reported on it. I was concerned with the Glendale subdivision that's going in, because the population increase is going to be 15,000 people in that subdivision. That is a lot of people. I also asked about Prudence. It's my understanding, and staff has said it, that the development that's being carried on in Grimsby, in Beamsville, and the the Glendale subdivision, that the infrastructure is fully taken care of. The infrastructure for water and the infrastructure for wastewater. So there is not a problem in reference to any of this construction that's going on in the town of Grimsby. They just put a great big extension on Baker Road. They put an extension and increased the capacity of the water treatment plant on the other side of the QEW. So don't worry about the infrastructure. It's my understanding the region is fully aware and has everything under control. So, and that has, I specifically asked the same question. I believe it was Councillor Cadwell that asked that, but having said that, it's all taken care of. So remember, the region will take care of you guys. Don't worry about it. We'll make sure you got enough water. Other than that, Mayor Jordan, I don't have anything further to report unless somebody else has any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Furtick, and I appreciate your patience. Thank you for waiting. Need a mover and seconder to introduce the bylaws. Councillor Bain and Councillor Dunstall. Moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 20-68 to 20-73 and 20-75, and that be the same be read a first time. All in favor? That's carried.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for the regional councillor.
I had questions regarding the bylaws and I had my hand raised, sorry.
All right, sorry, I just didn't see it on the screen. Councillor Bain first.
To Councillor Furtick, you mentioned about the region talking about, what do you call it, drug laws, legalizing drugs. I'm not quite sure why the region would be discussing that, and I would have a very strong objection to legalizing drugs. I could tell you a million stories of what happens when people need money for drugs. So why would the region even be considering?
Just a clarification, it's decriminalization of certain drugs. So there's fines rather than actual jail time, I think is what it is.
And what kind of drugs are they talking about decriminalizing?
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Furtick.
This is what this is why we deferred it back to committee. The decriminalization started at the federal level. It's like decriminalizing cannabis. The same sort of procedure is going to follow. The reason the region would get involved in it is because they are concerned about the mental health of people. The region is also supporting these drug centers where they have controlled drugs. So I would say that if anybody should be involved in it, it should be the region. If there's anything that happens in that area, even in the municipalities, normally the region would be involved with it. It's a provincial issue. It's a federal provincial issue, really. So the region should be involved in it.
The region should be opposed to it.
Well, I'm not saying we're not opposed to it. What we don't know is what does decriminalization mean?
It means more fair drivers, more deaths, more so on. And so on.
Councillor Bain, that's a matter of opinion.
It's a matter of fact. I live that life. You got to remember, that's what I do for a living. When I see 25 pounds of cocaine a night from one operation, I know the dangers of drugs.
Cocaine, I don't think is, I think it's talking about the other drugs, maybe like fentanyl and some of the drugs that are issued by prescription.
Wow.
We don't know about, I'm not a doctor, so you have to give the region a chance to come forward with some of the issues. I mean, you can't just.
You're talking about it, that's all.
Sorry?
I'm just surprised you're talking about it. Not you personally. I'm saying that the federal government is even considering it. Like the fact that they legalized cannabis was a mistake. But anyways, just my opinion. That's all. Sorry. Just wanted to know what it was.
That's okay, Counselor. It's my opportunity that I have to report these things to council, and I'm glad that somebody's looking at it, because I'm not the expert. So we're looking for the experts to come forward.
Thanks. Sorry to bite your head off, Wayne. It wasn't you personally, buddy.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Jordan. I just want to comment on, again, I take the region's value of their assessment of the sewage, and the water is fine. I know that. It's the sewage, because right now, the force main pumping station that is at Ontario Street and the Robinson Street area there, there's odor there already. And by adding all this extra development, sewage from all the people coming into Grimsby from the west end, that's where I have concerns, because already now you're dealing with an odor problem. And it's a force main pumping station that's back behind there. So I just wondering, Councillor, have you been notified, or you've been aware of the odor situation from that plant? Because I've been getting a lot of complaints, and it's not my ward, but when I'm in town, like people have been mentioning it to me. So is the region working on that at all? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Cadwell, no, I have not had one complaint, but that doesn't mean to say there isn't an issue there. Maybe it's time, and I think if you remember about maybe a year ago, just before COVID, that I sent out an email, I believe to yourself, that we should go and have a tour of the new Baker station, pumping station, because they did put a big extension on it. So maybe it's time that I'll organize a tour and let's go and have a look at it. So let's get it firsthand rather than, and also go to the water treatment plant. But that's what I've been told. Staff told me just the other day at Public Works meeting that everything's fine. So, and I don't know about the odor. I'm sorry. I haven't had any complaints.
Well, okay. I'm just relaying that complaints that I've had too on that. But I like your idea. I was at the sewage treatment plant the day we had the fire downtown, having a tour, and I've done the water treatment plant. I think that's a great idea for all members of council. Yeah, to get educated.
Through you, Mayor, I'll put out the invitation.
Thank you.
I look forward to it. Councillor Bothwell?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. My question was regarding the property standards, the bylaw officers, item number
2071.
Thank you. What that did was that reminded me that I'd had a conversation with the clerk on back in June, that we have a property standards appeal committee bylaw 2015-017 that talks about that a property standards committee shall be established consisting of 5 ratepayers of the corporation. The members will hold office for the term of council and shall hold office until members of council appoint new members, etc. And what I mentioned to the clerk was that we do not have a property. We didn't, as a council, actually set the property standards appeal committee during our term, and that the bylaw could quite easily, as it's normally the committee of adjustment members that serve that purpose, should be updated to reflect that, very similar to the town of Lincoln's wording, which is The members of the Town of Lincoln Committee of Adjustment shall be and are hereby appointed by the council of the corporation to be members of and sit as the Property Standards Committee for Appeals. So at that time, we have a gap because should a property appeal come forward as a council, we haven't put that in place through the bylaw. So I would like to ask the clerk, and I know how to do this. She'd mentioned in June that she would forward this to the Director of Planning at the time to bring an update to the bylaw. So I would like to put that on the referral list for council's to-dos to ensure that we get the property standards bylaw updated. In the event that we do have appeal, we have a proper mechanism for people to do that. If the clerk could respond as to how is best to have that bylaw updated, it would be appreciated.
You, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it has been forwarded to the planning department, so that they will review it and bring it back.
Can you put that in the referral list and designate it to Q1?
I'll put it under the minutes for information from council and request further.
Yeah, it is an action item, so yeah, I'd like to see it in the referral list so we don't lose track of it.
Just a point of order there. The referral list has all been passed by notices or by motions by council. So that's the only difference with the referral list.
Okay. Either way, I just don't want it to get dropped because I think we're in a position where we don't have a legal bylaw in place for that. A committee struck. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Councillor Furtick, for your report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. Next month, I guess, is going to be a big month because we're having a big change in waste management. Is that correct? I think it's next month, isn't it? Is there any updates or anything new on that, or because it's going to be a big change for everyone?
I think he's directed the question at me, Mr. Mayor. So no, there hasn't been anything other than it's October the 17th, I believe it starts. The only thing I will say is that double check, because the first week that it's supposed to start is not, they're only picking up. They're not picking up garbage that first week. They're not picking it up until the following week. So the following week you get your 2 garbage bags, but not the first week for Grimsby. That's all I can tell you. That's all I know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the standard reported October 19th.
To make sure that Councillor Sharp's diapers are picked up.
They're not my diapers. They're my kids' diapers.
Oh, okay. You have a part to play in that.
My diaper would be too big for one bag.
Thanks.
Through the mayor, I hope that Councillor Sharp has filled out his application to have his diapers picked up.
All right, need a mover and seconder for the second and third reading of the bylaws. Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Vane. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Vane. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 20-68 to 20-73 and 20-75. Read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and the contrary to the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same, and the rule of the council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. We're at number 12 now, announcements. Do we have any? Seeing none, next meeting of council is scheduled for October 5th, 2020, following the committee of the whole meeting at Town Council chambers. Now we're moving into closed session. Need a mover and seconder to move into closed session. Councillor Vane, Councillor Bothwell. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Bothwell. Resolved that council meet in closed session regarding the following. Under section 2392 I or L, third-party information supplied in competence to municipality, and section 2392J, information that belongs to the municipality and has monetary value. Corporate emergency communication system. Chief Thompson? No? Oh, we have to vote, sorry, to go into closed. All in favor to go into closed? That's carried. We're now in closed. Need a mover and seconder for report FCR 29. Councillor Dunstall, Councillor Sharp. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that confidential report FCR 20-09, corporate emergency communication systems dated September 15th, 2020 be received, and that the acting fire chief be directed to proceed as approved in closed session, and that associated annual operating costs be approved. Councillor Bothwell?
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall?
Yes.
Councillor Frake?
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Councillor Sharp?
Yes.
Councillor Vane?
Yes.
Councillor Vardy?
Yes.
Myself, I'm a yes, that's carried. All right. Need a mover and seconder for the first set of bylaws. Councillor Dunstall, Councillor Ritchie. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Ritchie. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 20-76 inclusive, and that be read, same be read a first time. All in favor? It's carried. Need a mover and seconder for second and third reading. Councillor Frake, Councillor Vane. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vane. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 20-76 inclusive, read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and the mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same, and rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. Anything else? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Good night.